What you're about to hear sounds unbelievable, but every word of it is true. If you love unexpected twists, hit that like button and stay until the end. And when you hear the final reveal, tell me, did you see it coming?
When Elena Cole saved a bleeding stranger on a subway platform, she had no idea she'd just caught the attention of New York's most dangerous man. Now Damian Moretti, the Mafia boss everyone fears, has decided she belongs to him. But Elena came to this city with one mission: raise $200,000 for her grandmother's surgery in 30 days, or lose the only family she has left. Caught between a father who abandoned her, a fiancé who might betray her, and a crime lord who refuses to let her go, Elena is about to learn that in Damian's world, protection and possession are the same thing. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The train screeched into Penn Station at 11:47 p.m., and Elena Cole stepped onto the platform with everything she owned in a single duffel bag and $200 in her pocket. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sickly yellow shadows across the dirty tiles. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times during the 36-hour bus ride from Asheville. What she would say, how she would stand, the exact tone of desperation she'd allow into her voice when she begged, because that's what she'd come here to do. Beg. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospice nurse. "Your grandmother is asking for you. The doctors say we need to make a decision about the surgery by the end of the month. 30 days. That's all Elena had to find $200,000. She pulled her coat tighter against the November cold seeping through the station and started toward the exit. Around her, the late-night crowd moved with practiced indifference. Businessmen with loosened ties, college students with headphones, a woman in a hospital uniform clutching a coffee like a lifeline. Nobody looked at each other. Nobody stopped. Elena had forgotten how lonely a city of 8 million people could feel. She was halfway to the stairs when she heard the sound, a wet, rattling cough that didn't belong to the usual symphony of urban noise. She paused, her nursing instincts kicking in before her common sense could stop them. The cough came again, weaker this time, from somewhere near the closed newsstand. "Keep walking," she told herself. "You're not here to save anyone else. You're here to save Grandma Rose." But her feet had already changed direction. She found him slumped against the newsstand's metal shutters, half hidden in shadow. At first glance, he looked like any other homeless man the city had forgotten, except for the blood. It pooled beneath him, dark and spreading, soaking through an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena had made in the last 6 months. "Jesus," she whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. The man's head lolled to the side. He was maybe 30, with black hair and features that would have been handsome if they weren't twisted in pain. A deep gash ran along his side, just below the ribs, a knife wound, clean and deliberate. Someone had wanted him dead. Elena's hands moved on autopilot, years of nursing school overriding the screaming voice in her head that said this was none of her business. She yanked off her scarf and pressed it against the wound. The man's eyes flew open. They were the coldest eyes she'd ever seen, gray like steel or storm clouds, and completely devoid of the fear that should have been there. Instead, they studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Don't," he said, his voice rough but commanding. "Don't touch me." "You're bleeding out," Elena shot back, pressing harder. "So unless you want to die on this disgusting floor, shut up and let me help you." A ghost of something, amusement, surprise, flickered across his face. Around them, the few people who'd noticed were giving them a wide berth, their eyes sliding away as if they hadn't seen anything at all. "They know," the man said softly. "They know who I am." "I don't care who you are." Elena reached for her phone. "I'm calling 911. His hand shot out, faster than someone losing blood should be able to move, and closed around her wrist. The grip was iron, inescapable. "No hospitals, no police." "Then you'll die." "Better than the alternative." Elena stared at him, at the blood still pulsing between her fingers despite the pressure, at the stubborn set of his jaw. She'd seen that look before in her grandmother's eyes when she refused to accept charity. Pride that would rather kill you than bend. "Fine," she said. "Where do you live? I can—" "Miss Elena Cole." She froze. The voice came from behind her, smooth and cultured, belonging to a man who'd appeared out of nowhere. He was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his dark hair and a suit even more expensive than the dying man's. Two others flanked him, both built like refrigerators, their hands conspicuously inside their jackets. "How do you know my name?" Elena demanded. The silver-haired man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I know many things. For instance, I know you arrived in New York exactly 17 minutes ago. I know you're here to see your father, Richard Cole, and ask him for money. I know you've been working as a nurse's aide in North Carolina for the past 3 years. And I know," his gaze dropped to the bleeding man, "you've just made a very interesting choice." "I'm helping someone who's hurt," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "That's all." "That's not someone, Miss Cole. That's Damien Moretti." The name meant nothing to her. The way everyone in earshot suddenly found somewhere else to be meant everything. "Should I know who that is?" she asked. The silver-haired man actually laughed. "Refreshing, genuinely refreshing." He gestured to his companions. "Gentlemen, help Mr. Moretti to the car. Miss Cole, you'll come with us." "Like hell I will." "I'm afraid I must insist." The man's smile never wavered, but something cold crept into his tone. "You've touched something that belongs to my employer. That makes you interesting. And interesting people don't get to simply walk away." Elena felt Damien's grip tighten on her wrist. A warning or a plea, she couldn't tell. The two large men moved forward, and Elena realized with crystalline clarity that she had no choice here. She could scream, run, fight, but in the end, she'd be in their car anyway. "Let me bring my bag," she said quietly. The silver-haired man nodded. "Of course. We're not barbarians." The car was a Mercedes, black and bulletproof if Elena had to guess, with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see out. Damien sat beside her in the back seat, his breathing shallow but steady. Someone had produced a first aid kit, and Elena worked in silence, cleaning and bandaging the wound as best she could without proper supplies. "You need stitches," she said, "and antibiotics. If this gets infected—" "It won't," Damien replied. His color was better now, though his shirt was ruined. "You have skilled hands." "I'm a nursing aide, not a surgeon." "And yet you didn't hesitate." His gray eyes studied her again, that same unnerving intensity. "Why?" "Because you were bleeding. So are a lot of people in this city." Elena tied off the bandage with more force than necessary. "Look, I don't know what kind of philosophical conversation you're trying to have, but I just got off a 36-hour bus ride. I smell like rest stop bathroom, and I need to be at my father's house first thing tomorrow morning to convince him not to let my grandmother die. So forgive me if I'm not in the mood for deep thoughts about human nature." Silence filled the car. The silver-haired man, sitting in the front passenger seat, made a sound that might have been a cough or a laugh. Damien's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile. "What's your grandmother's name?" "Why do you care?" "Humor me." "Rose. Rose Bennett." Elena zipped the first aid kit closed. "She raised me after my mom died. She's the only family I have that's worth a damn, and she needs heart surgery that costs $200,000 that I don't have. Happy?" "No," Damien said softly. "I'm not." The car pulled to a stop in front of a building that Elena recognized from her childhood, the kind of Upper East Side brownstone that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Her father's building. "We know where you'll be," the silver-haired man said as the door opened. "If you need anything, Miss Cole, you have only to ask." "I don't even know who you are," Elena said. "My name is Vincent. I work for Mr. Moretti. And you, Miss Cole, have just become very important to him." Vincent's smile was almost paternal. "I suggest you remember that." Elena climbed out of the car, her duffel bag feeling heavier than it had an hour ago. As the Mercedes pulled away, she could have sworn she saw Damien watching her through the dark glass, those storm cloud eyes burning with something she couldn't name. She was at her father's door at 8 a.m. sharp, wearing the only clean dress she owned and rehearsing her speech for the 1,000th time. "Dad, I know we haven't talked in years, but Grandma Rose needs help. You promised Mom before she died that you'd always take care of us. Please, I'm begging you." The woman who answered the door was her age, maybe younger, with the kind of polish that came from expensive salons and personal trainers. Her smile was bright and fake. Can I help you? I'm here to see Richard Cole. I'm his daughter. The smile didn't waver. Oh, you must be the one from, was it North Carolina? Daddy mentioned you might stop by. Come in, come in. Daddy. The word hit Elena like a slap. The interior of the brownstone was exactly as she remembered. Hardwood floors, original crown molding, art that cost more than cars. Elena had lived here until she was 8, before her mother got sick, before her father decided his new tech startup was more important than a dying wife and grieving daughter. Daddy's in his study, the woman chirped. I'm Madison, by the way. The new Mrs. Cole, she giggled. Well, not that new. We've been married almost 4 years now. 4 years. Elena's mother had been dead for 7. Madison led her to the study, knocked twice, and disappeared without waiting for a response. Elena pushed the door open to find her father exactly where she'd expected him, behind his massive desk, reading something on his laptop, barely glancing up. Richard Cole had aged well, the bastard. At 52, he had the look of a man who'd never missed a meal or lost a night of sleep over anything that mattered. His hair was graying at the temples in that distinguished way some men managed, and his suit probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. Elena, he said, his tone as warm as a business handshake. You look tired. Hello, Dad. I assume you're here about Rose. He closed his laptop. Madison mentioned something about a surgery. The fact that he'd been briefed by his wife about his own mother-in-law's medical crisis said everything Elena needed to know about how this conversation would go, but she pressed on anyway. The doctors say she needs a mitral valve replacement. Without it, she has maybe 6 months. With it, she could have years. And the cost? $200,000. I've been saving for 3 years, and I have about $15,000. I've applied for every grant, every charity, every payment plan the hospital offers. I've sold everything I own except the clothes on my back. I've worked double shifts until I couldn't see straight. But it's not enough, and we're running out of time. Richard leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. And you want me to pay for it. You told Mom. I told your mother a lot of things 20 years ago. His voice was sharp. I was young and idealistic and thought I could save everyone. I've learned better since then. She's your ex-wife's mother, the woman who took care of your daughter when you couldn't be bothered. Watch your tone. Elena bit down on the rage, threatening to spill out. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back. Every penny, with interest. I'll sign whatever contract you want, please. Do you have any idea what my financial situation is right now? Richard stood, pacing to the window. Madison's pregnant. We're expanding the company. My assets are tied up in investments that can't be liquidated without massive penalties. Even if I wanted to help you, which I'm not sure I do given your attitude, I literally don't have that kind of liquid capital lying around. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that Elena almost believed it. Almost. You're wearing a watch that costs $50,000, she said quietly. You drove a Bentley the last time I checked. This brownstone is worth at least $8 million. But you don't have $200,000 to save a woman's life? Richard turned, and for just a moment, Elena saw something ugly flash across his face. I worked for everything I have. I built my fortune from nothing while Rose sat in that house in North Carolina judging every decision I made. She never thought I was good enough for your mother. She made that very clear. So this is revenge? She didn't like you 30 years ago, so you'll let her die? This is reality. Richard moved back to his desk, his expression hardening. I'm not a bank, Elena. I'm not a charity. You want money? Get a job. Take out loans. Figure it out like everyone else has to. I did. It made me who I am. The dismissal was clear. Elena stood, her legs shaking with fury and despair. You know what? You're right. Rose never thought you were good enough for Mom. Turns out she was a better judge of character than any of us gave her credit for. Get out of my house. Gladly. Elena grabbed her bag. But when Grandma Rose dies, remember that you could have stopped it. Remember that you chose a watch and a car and your pride over a human life. And when Madison has that baby, when you're teaching them about values and integrity and family, remember that you taught them by example exactly how much those words actually mean to you. She slammed the door on her way out, missing Madison's perfectly made-up face by inches. The younger Mrs. Cole stood in the hallway with a tray of coffee, her expression caught between sympathy and relief that the scene was over. "I'm sorry," Madison said softly. "For what it's worth, I asked him to help. But Daddy says it's important to let people learn to stand on their own." "Daddy?" There it was again. Elena pushed past her, down the stairs, out the door, onto the street where the morning traffic was building toward gridlock. She made it half a block before the tears came, hot and furious and useless. 30 days. She had 30 days, and the only plan she'd had just disintegrated. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Miss Cole, Vincent here. Mr. Moretti would like to extend an invitation to dinner tonight at 8 p.m. A car will collect you from wherever is convenient. This is not optional." Elena stared at the message, then at the street around her, suddenly aware of the black Mercedes idling 2 car lengths away. They'd been watching. They'd seen everything. She typed back, "I'm not interested in whatever this is." The response was immediate. "Mr. Moretti is prepared to discuss your grandmother's medical situation. He believes he may be able to help." Elena's finger hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that men who got stabbed on subway platforms and traveled with armed guards weren't the kind of people who helped out of the goodness of their hearts. But every instinct had also told her that her father would come through, and look where that had gotten her. "Where?" she typed. "The Meridian. Midtown. The car will find you." Elena shoved the phone in her pocket and started walking. She had 8 hours to figure out what the hell she'd just agreed to. She spent those 8 hours in a public library, using their free Wi-Fi to research Damien Moretti. What she found made her blood run cold. The legitimate sources, business journals, society pages, painted a picture of a wealthy real estate developer, heir to the Moretti family fortune, known for buying struggling properties and turning them into luxury developments. 32 years old, unmarried, Columbia-educated, philanthropist. The other sources, Reddit threads, true crime forums, anonymous posts, told a different story. The Moretti family wasn't just wealthy. They were connected, as in organized crime connected, as in Damien Moretti wasn't just a real estate developer. He was the man who'd taken over his father's organization 5 years ago and consolidated power through a combination of strategic ruthlessness and calculated violence that made the old guard look like amateurs. There were rumors of bodies that disappeared, of businesses that burned, of witnesses who suddenly developed amnesia. Nothing proven, nothing that stuck in court, but enough smoke to indicate a 5-alarm fire. And Elena had saved his life. More importantly, Elena had touched him when everyone else in that station had kept their distance. She'd seen him vulnerable, bleeding, possibly dying. In the world he came from, that meant something. She just wasn't sure what. At 7:45 p.m., she stood outside the library in the same dress she'd worn that morning, her hair pulled back, her makeup minimal. The Mercedes pulled up exactly on time. Vincent stepped out, opening the door with a slight bow. "Miss Cole, you look lovely." "I look like I slept in a bus station," Elena said, "because I did." Mr. Moretti appreciates authenticity. The drive to the Meridian took 20 minutes through evening traffic. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a building in Midtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the city lights spreading out like fallen stars. Elena had read about this place. $500 per person minimum, reservation list 6 months long, the kind of establishment where celebrities went to avoid being seen. The maitre d' greeted Vincent by name and led them through the dining room to a private area separated by frosted glass. Damien sat at a table set for 2, looking nothing like the dying man from the subway platform. He changed into a black suit that fit him like it had been made for his body specifically, his dark hair styled back, his gray eyes sharp and assessing. He stood when she entered. "Elena, thank you for coming." "You didn't give me much choice." "I always give people choices." He gestured to the chair across from him. "You're choosing to be here because you dangled my grandmother's life in front of me like bait. I prefer to think of it as offering a solution to a problem we both recognize you have." Damien waited until she sat before taking his own seat. "How's your father?" So he had been watching. "Rich, selfish, and determined to prove that blood means nothing." "I could have told you that." Damien poured wine into her glass without asking if she wanted it. "Richard Cole has a reputation in certain circles. A man who'd sell his own mother if the price was right. I'm sorry he disappointed you." Are you? You seem like the kind of person who understands transactional relationships just fine. Damien's smile was slow and genuinely amused. You're angry. Good. Angry people make clear decisions. A waiter appeared with the first course, something that looked more like art than food. Elena ignored it, focusing on the man across from her. Why am I here, Mr. Moretti? Damien, he corrected. And you're here because you saved my life, and I don't like being in debt. So this is payback? Buy me an expensive dinner, throw some money at my problem, and we're even? No. Damien's expression shifted, becoming serious. This is me recognizing that you did something extraordinary. In a city full of people who would have stepped over my body, you stopped. You helped. You didn't know who I was, didn't care about consequences, just saw someone who needed help and acted. That's rare, Elena, rare enough that I'd like to understand it better. There's nothing to understand. I'm a nurse. It's what we do. You're a nursing aide who works in a hospice facility in Asheville, North Carolina, making $34,000 a year. You've been saving every penny for 3 years to afford a surgery that still costs nearly $200,000 more than you have. You came to New York on a bus because you couldn't afford a plane ticket. You're staying at a youth hostel in Brooklyn that charges $40 a night because it's the cheapest option you could find. Damien took a sip of wine. Vincent is very thorough. Elena's hands clenched in her lap. If you know so much about me, you know I can't possibly have anything you'd want. On the contrary, you have something very few people in my life possess, which is integrity. The word hung between them like a challenge. Elena laughed, the sound bitter. That's a strange thing for someone in your line of work to value. What do you think my line of work is? I spent 8 hours on Google. I know exactly what your line of work is. Do you? Damien leaned forward. Tell me. Elena met his gaze steadily. You're a criminal. You run an organization that deals in God knows what, drugs, weapons, gambling, prostitution. You hurt people. You've probably killed people. And you want me to believe you value integrity? I do all of those things, Damien agreed calmly. Except the drugs. I have standards. And the prostitution. That's just distasteful. But yes, I run an organization that operates outside the law. I make decisions that sometimes require violence. I've killed people who would have killed me or mine if I'd given them the chance. And despite all of that, or perhaps because of it, I understand the value of someone who acts according to their principles rather than their fears. That's the most twisted logic I've ever heard. Is it? Damien sat back. Your father has never broken a law in his life. He pays his taxes, donates to charity, goes to church on Sundays, and he looked you in the eye this morning and refused to help his dying mother-in-law because it would inconvenience him financially. I, on the other hand, break laws for breakfast. But I'm sitting here offering to pay for a surgery for a woman I've never met because you showed me kindness when you had no reason to. Which one of us has integrity, Elena? She had no answer for that. The meal continued in silence for a while. The food was exquisite, each course a masterpiece of flavor and presentation. But Elena barely tasted it. Her mind was spinning, trying to understand the angle, find the trap. Nobody gave away $200,000 for nothing. What do you want from me? She finally asked as dessert arrived. I want you to let me pay for your grandmother's surgery. In exchange for what? Nothing. Bullshit. Damien smiled. Such language from a nurse. I'm serious. Nobody hands over that kind of money without expecting something in return. So what is it? You want me to work for you, carry packages, spy on someone? What? I want you to accept my help. Damien's expression softened almost imperceptibly. That's all. Why? Because yesterday, a girl I didn't know risked herself to help a stranger who was bleeding on a subway platform. Because in my world, that kind of action is so rare it's practically extinct. Because your grandmother raised someone extraordinary, and I'd like to see what kind of person she is. He paused. And because I can, and so few things in life are that simple. Elena studied him, searching for the lie, the manipulation, the trap. But his gray eyes were steady, almost gentle, and she realized with a start that he meant it. At least he meant some version of it that made sense in whatever twisted moral framework he operated under. I can't accept $200,000 from you, she said quietly. I don't even know you. Then get to know me. That's not 6 months, Damien interrupted. Give me 6 months. Have dinner with me once a week. Let me ask you questions, understand how you think, why you do what you do. In exchange, I'll pay for the surgery immediately. Your grandmother can have it done at the best hospital in New York with the best cardiac surgeon in the country. I'll also provide accommodation for her recovery and any additional care she needs. That's insane. That's my offer. Elena's head was spinning. You want to pay $200,000 plus expenses for the privilege of having dinner with me once a week for 6 months? Yes. What if I say no? Damien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been disappointment. Then I'll have Vincent drive you back to your hostel, and you'll never hear from me again. Your father will continue to refuse you. You'll go back to North Carolina and watch your grandmother die slowly, knowing you did everything you could except accept help from the wrong person. The bluntness of it stole her breath. That's cruel. That's reality. Damien signaled for the check. I'm not a good man, Elena. I'm not offering this from some altruistic desire to save the world. I'm offering because I want something, and I'm willing to pay for it. The question isn't whether my offer is fair or moral or appropriate. The question is whether you love your grandmother enough to accept it anyway. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. The manipulation was masterful because it was true. She did love Rose enough. She'd do anything, sacrifice anything, accept help from anyone if it meant her grandmother lived. Even if that meant having dinner once a week with a man who probably had more blood on his hands than she could imagine. The dinners, she said slowly. Just conversation? Nothing else? Just conversation. And if at any point I want to stop, you can walk away. The surgery's already paid for at that point. I won't ask for the money back. Why would you agree to that? I could just take the money and disappear after the first dinner. Damien's smile was knowing. You could, but you won't. Because despite everything, Elena Cole, you're not that kind of person. You'll honor the agreement because you gave your word, and your word actually means something to you. He was right, and they both knew it. Elena took a shaky breath. I need to think about it. Of course. Damien stood, and Vincent appeared as if summoned. Take all the time you need. You have my number. When you're ready to accept, call me. The offer stands for 72 hours. And after that, I'll assume you've chosen pride over practicality, and I'll move on. Damien extended his hand. It was a pleasure meeting you, Elena. I hope I hear from you again. She took his hand, expecting the same iron grip from the subway platform. Instead, his touch was gentle, almost reverent, his fingers warm against her cold skin. One question, she said as Vincent waited by the door. Last night, on the platform, who stabbed you? Damien's expression went cold, the warmth evaporating like it had never existed. Someone who won't make that mistake again. Is he dead? Does it matter? Elena pulled her hand back. Yes, it matters. Then yes, he's dead, and before you ask, no, I don't regret it. In my world, you get one chance to kill me. He took his shot and missed. I don't give second chances. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather or a stock price, made Elena's stomach turn. This was who she was considering making a deal with, not some misunderstood anti-hero from a movie, but an actual criminal who actually killed people and actually didn't lose sleep over it. Vincent drove her back to the hostel in silence. When she climbed out of the Mercedes, her phone buzzed one last time. The surgeon's name is Dr. Patricia Chen. She's expecting your call if you decide to proceed. The surgery can be scheduled as early as next week. DM. Elena stared at the message until her vision blurred. Next week. Rose could have the surgery next week. Could be on the road to recovery. Could have years instead of months. All it would cost was Elena's certainty that she understood the difference between right and wrong. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her shared room in the hostel. A space barely big enough for 4 bunk beds and a communal bathroom down the hall. Her roommates were already asleep or pretending to be. Elena crawled into her assigned bunk, pulled the thin blanket over her head, and allowed herself to cry. Somewhere in the city below, Damien Moretti was probably sleeping in a penthouse worth millions, his wound already healing, his conscience uncomplicated by the murder he'd admitted to like it was nothing. And somewhere in North Carolina, Rose Bennett was lying in a hospice bed, her heart failing a little more each day, waiting for a granddaughter who'd promised to save her. Elena pulled out her phone and stared at Damien's number for a long time. Her finger hovered over the call button, trembling with indecision and desperation and fury at the universe for putting her in this position. She didn't call. Not yet. But she didn't delete the number either. Elena lasted 2 days before she broke. 48 hours of lying awake in that hostel bunk, staring at the water-stained ceiling while her roommate snored and the city noise filtered through the thin walls. 48 hours of calling hospitals, begging financial counselors for options that didn't exist, applying for medical loans that came back denied within minutes. 48 hours of watching her savings account balance, $15,247.89. And knowing it might as well have been $15 for all the difference it made. On the morning of the third day, she called the number. Damien answered on the first ring. "I was beginning to think you'd chosen pride." "I'm choosing my grandmother," Elena said, her voice hollow. "That's all this is." "Of course." His tone gave nothing away. "I'll have Vincent collect you in an hour. Dr. Chen would like to meet Rose before scheduling the surgery." "She's in North Carolina." "I'm aware. The plane leaves at noon." Elena's hand tightened on the phone. "You have a plane." "I have several. This one seats 8 comfortably. Plenty of room for you, me, Vincent, and a medical team to assess your grandmother's current condition." A pause. "Unless you'd prefer to handle the transportation arrangements yourself?" The casual way he said it, like chartering a private jet was the same as calling an Uber, reminded Elena exactly who she was dealing with. "Fine. 1 hour." "Elena," his voice softened, "you're doing the right thing." She hung up before he could hear her crying. The plane was a Gulfstream, sleek and white, waiting at a private airport in Teterboro. Elena had never been on a private jet before. She'd barely been on planes at all, maybe 3 times in her entire life, always in the cheapest seats available. This was a different universe entirely. Cream leather seats, polished wood trim, a flight attendant who offered champagne before they'd even taken off. Damien sat across from her, looking perfectly at home in the luxury. He'd dressed down today, just dark jeans and a black sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But somehow that made him more dangerous, not less. Without the armor of a suit, she could see the lean muscle of his frame, the way he moved with controlled precision, the silver scar along his jawline that she hadn't noticed before. "How long have you had this plane?" she asked, just to fill the silence. 3 years. It's practical for business." "What kind of business requires a private jet?" Damien's smile was slight. "The kind that operates in multiple cities simultaneously. I have interests in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Miami, Las Vegas. Flying commercial would be inefficient." "Interests." Elena leaned back in her seat. "That's a nice word for it. Would you prefer I be more specific? Would you be honest if I asked?" "Probably not." He gestured to the flight attendant, who brought over 2 glasses of water. "But I appreciate that you're curious enough to try." The flight took 90 minutes. Elena spent most of it staring out the window, watching the landscape shift from urban sprawl to rolling hills to the familiar mountains of western North Carolina. Damien worked on a laptop, occasionally taking calls in a language Elena didn't recognize. Italian, maybe, or some dialect she'd never heard. Each conversation was brief, his tone clipped and authoritative, ending with what sounded like orders rather than requests. When they landed at a small regional airport outside Asheville, 2 black SUVs were already waiting on the tarmac. Vincent emerged from the first one, along with a woman in her 50s wearing professional attire and carrying a medical bag. "Miss Cole, this is Dr. Patricia Chen," Vincent said. "She'll be conducting the initial assessment." Dr. Chen extended her hand with a warm smile. Elena recognized the type immediately. A physician who'd chosen her profession out of genuine calling rather than prestige. "It's lovely to meet you, Elena. Mr. Moretti has told me about your grandmother's condition. I'm looking forward to helping her." "You're really the best cardiac surgeon in New York?" Elena asked. "I'm one of them," Dr. Chen said modestly. "I've performed over 2,000 mitral valve replacements with a success rate above 98%. Your grandmother will be in excellent hands." The drive to the hospice facility took 20 minutes. Elena watched Damien's expression as they passed through her hometown, the small downtown with its antique shops and coffee houses, the residential streets with their modest homes and tidy yards, the mountain views that had always made her feel simultaneously trapped and safe. His face revealed nothing, but she caught him studying everything with that same intense focus he'd turned on her in the subway station. "It's not New York," she said defensively. "No," Damien agreed. "It's better, quieter, more honest." "You say that like you've spent time in places like this." "I grew up in Queens. Before my father made his fortune, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 7 people. My mother grew tomatoes in window boxes because she couldn't afford a garden." He looked at her. "I understand small-town life, Elena. I chose to leave it, but I understand it." The hospice facility was a converted Victorian house on the edge of town, painted pale yellow with white trim and a wraparound porch. Elena had spent countless hours here over the past year, watching her grandmother decline despite the staff's best efforts. She knew every creaking floorboard, every faded photograph in the hallway, every nurse by name. Mary, the afternoon shift supervisor, looked up from the desk as they entered. Her eyes widened at the entourage behind Elena. "Elena, we weren't expecting you until next week." Her gaze moved to Damien, lingering with obvious feminine appreciation before snapping back to professional courtesy. "How can we help you?" "I'm here to see Grandma Rose. I brought some doctors to evaluate her condition." Elena gestured to Dr. Chen. "This is Dr. Patricia Chen from New York. She's a cardiac surgeon." Mary's expression brightened with hope, so naked it hurt to see. "Of course. Rose will be thrilled. She's been asking about you constantly." She lowered her voice. "Elena, has something changed? Is there treatment available?" "Maybe," Elena said, not trusting herself to say more. Rose Bennett's room was at the end of the hall, the one with the window overlooking the garden. Elena pushed open the door to find her grandmother exactly where she'd been 3 days ago, propped up in bed, oxygen tube in her nose, reading a paperback mystery novel with the kind of fierce concentration that said she was pretending not to be in pain. She looked up at the sound of the door. Her face, once beautiful and now carved with age and illness into something more fragile, lit up with joy. "Ellie, you came back so fast, baby girl. I told you not to waste money on bus tickets when I'm just sitting here being lazy." She stopped, noticing the crowd behind Elena. "Oh my. Are we having a party?" "Grandma Rose, this is Dr. Chen." Elena moved to the bedside, taking her grandmother's hand. The bones felt so delicate, like bird wings. "She's a heart surgeon from New York. She's here to see if you're strong enough for the surgery." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "Ellie, sweetheart, we talked about this. That surgery costs—" "It's handled," Elena interrupted. "Don't ask me how, just let the doctor examine you, okay?" "Elena Cole, you didn't do something foolish, did you? You didn't borrow money from—" Rose's gaze landed on Damien, who'd stayed near the door, watching the scene with that unreadable expression. Her eyes narrowed with the same sharp intelligence that had gotten her through 73 years of life, most of them hard. "Who's that?" "A friend," Elena said. "Liar." Rose's voice was weak but certain. "You don't have friends who look like that. Nobody has friends who look like that unless they're in magazines or trouble." Damien stepped forward with a slight smile. "Mrs. Bennett, my name is Damien Moretti. Your granddaughter saved my life 3 days ago. I'm returning the favor by paying for experimental heart surgery. By paying for necessary heart surgery from the best cardiac surgeon in the country." Rose studied him for a long moment. Elena had seen that look before. Her grandmother could read people like X-rays read bones, seeing straight through to the truth underneath. Whatever she saw in Damien made her expression soften slightly. "You're in love with her," Rose said flatly. Elena choked on air. "Grandma, I'm not blind, baby girl. I can see how he looks at you." "Mrs. Bennett," Damien said smoothly, "I barely know your granddaughter, but I recognize quality when I see it, and I believe in paying my debts." "Uh-huh." Rose didn't look convinced, but she turned her attention to Dr. Chen. "All right, doctor, let's see if this old heart is worth saving." The examination took 40 minutes. Dr. Chen was thorough and gentle, asking questions, listening to Rose's heart, reviewing the medical charts that Mary brought in. Elena stood by the window, pretending to look at the garden while actually watching Damien's reflection in the glass. He'd taken a seat in the corner, content to observe silently, but his eyes never left Elena's face. Finally, Dr. Chen straightened up with a satisfied nod. "Mrs. Bennett, you're an excellent candidate for the surgery. Your heart is weak, but your overall health is better than I expected. With proper preoperative care and post-operative rehabilitation, I'd estimate your chances of full recovery at approximately 90%. Rose's hand found Elena's and squeezed. 90%? 90%, Dr. Chen confirmed. We'll need to do the surgery within the next 2 weeks while you're still strong enough. I'd like to transport you to New York Presbyterian tomorrow if you're willing. We have a cardiac care unit that can monitor you closely before the procedure." "Tomorrow?" Rose looked at Elena. "Sweetheart, that's so fast. Are you sure about this?" Elena knelt beside the bed, both hands wrapping around her grandmother's. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "And the cost is handled," Damien said from the corner. "You don't need to worry about finances, Mrs. Bennett. Just focus on getting better." Rose's eyes glistened. "Why would a stranger do this for us?" "Because your granddaughter wouldn't hesitate to help a stranger," Damien said simply. "She gets that from somewhere." After Dr. Chen left to make arrangements, Elena walked Damien outside to the garden. The afternoon sun was warm despite the November chill, and the last of the autumn flowers were clinging stubbornly to life in the carefully tended beds. They sat on a bench beneath a willow tree, far enough from the building for privacy. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "I know I haven't said it properly yet, but thank you. You're saving her life. You saved mine first. Not the same thing. You got stabbed. She got old and sick. One of those is significantly more heroic than the other." Damien turned to face her. "You think saving my life was heroic?" "I think it was stupid," Elena admitted. "But yeah, I guess it was heroic too. Most people would have kept walking. Most people are cowards." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair away from her face. The gesture was so unexpected, so gentle, that Elena froze. "You're not." "I'm terrified," she whispered, "all the time, of losing her, of making the wrong choices, of what happens after she's better, and I have to figure out what I owe you." "You don't owe me anything." "We both know that's not true." Damien's hand fell away. "The agreement was dinner once a week for 6 months. That's all I'm asking for." "Why?" Elena searched his face. "I still don't understand why. You could have anyone. You're rich, powerful, probably have women throwing themselves at you constantly. Why does it matter whether some nursing aide from North Carolina has dinner with you?" "Because you're real," Damien said. "Everyone in my life wants something from me. Money, protection, access, power. They smile and lie and pretend to care because I'm useful to them. But you?" He laughed, the sound almost bitter. "You can't stand me. You think I'm a criminal and a murderer, and you're probably right on both counts. But you don't pretend otherwise. You don't perform for me. And that's worth more than you realize. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Welcome to my world." They sat in silence for a while, watching the leaves drift down from the willow tree. Elena thought about her grandmother's words. "You're in love with her," and wondered if Rose's instincts were failing along with her heart. Damien didn't seem capable of love. Obsession, maybe. Possession, certainly. But love required vulnerability, and this man had built walls so high she couldn't imagine anyone scaling them. "I need to go back to New York," she said finally. "Find a job, a real place to stay. I can't live in that hostel for 6 months. Vincent has already arranged an apartment for you, furnished, utilities included, in a safe neighborhood near the hospital where your grandmother will be recovering." Elena's head snapped around. "You can't just—" "I can, and I have." Damien stood, extending his hand to help her up. "You need to be close to Rose during her recovery. You need somewhere stable to live while you look for work. This is practical, Elena, not charity." "What's the rent?" "Covered for the first year." "Damien, consider it part of the agreement. You can't have dinner with me once a week if you're homeless." His expression softened. "Let me do this, please." The please was what broke her. Elena took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "I'm going to pay you back, every cent. I don't care if it takes me 10 years. I know you will, Damien said. That's what makes you different. They flew back to New York that evening after Elena packed Rose's things and made arrangements with the hospice staff. Dr. Chen had organized a medical transport for the next morning, an ambulance equipped with everything Rose might need during the journey north. Elena tried not to think about the cost of all this, the private planes and medical teams and hospital rooms. If she started calculating, she'd drown in the debt. The apartment Damien had arranged was in Brooklyn, a two-bedroom in a pre-war building with hardwood floors and windows that actually opened. The furniture was simple but good quality, a couch that didn't sag, a bed with a real mattress, a kitchen table that seated 4. After 3 nights in a hostel bunk, it felt like a palace. Vincent had stocked the refrigerator and left a folder on the counter with keys, building information, and a welcome packet that included restaurant menus and subway maps. There was also an envelope with Elena's name on it. Inside was a credit card and a note in Damien's handwriting. For groceries and necessities. Don't argue. Elena put the card on the table and stared at it for a long time. She was in his debt now, truly and completely, in ways that went beyond their agreement. He'd given her an apartment, furniture, food, hope. He'd saved her grandmother's life before the surgery had even happened just by making it possible. And all he wanted in return was dinner once a week. It still didn't make sense, but Elena was too exhausted to figure it out tonight. She fell asleep in her new bed, in her new apartment, in a city that still felt foreign and overwhelming and dreamed of gray eyes and dangerous promises. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of medical procedures and waiting rooms. Rose arrived safely and was immediately admitted to New York Presbyterian's cardiac care unit. The preoperative testing revealed that her condition was worse than the Asheville doctors had realized, but Dr. Chen remained optimistic. The surgery was scheduled for the following Monday. Elena spent her days at the hospital and her nights in the apartment, learning the rhythms of her new neighborhood. She'd found a coffee shop on the corner that opened at 6 and served breakfast sandwiches that actually tasted homemade. The owner, a Korean woman named Mrs. Park, had taken one look at Elena's tired face and started giving her free refills. On Wednesday evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Damien. Dinner Friday at 7. Vincent will collect you at 6:30. Elena stared at the text. In everything that had happened, she'd almost forgotten about their agreement. Almost. She typed back, "My grandmother's surgery is Monday. I don't think I should." The response was immediate. Dr. Chen says the surgery will take 4 to 6 hours, and Rose will be in recovery for at least 8 hours after that. You'll be useless to her if you don't take care of yourself. Friday, 7 p.m. Don't make me send Vincent to drag you out. You wouldn't. Try me. Elena found herself smiling despite everything. She typed, "Fine, but nowhere too fancy. I'm running out of clean dresses." Noted. Friday arrived with cold rain that turned the city gray and miserable. Elena spent the morning with Rose, reading aloud from the mystery novel her grandmother had started back in Asheville. Rose seemed stronger today, more like herself, cracking jokes with the nurses and complaining about the hospital food. "You look pretty," Rose said when Elena stood to leave. "Where are you going?" "Dinner with Damien." "Ah, the mysterious benefactor." Rose's expression turned serious. "Ellie, baby girl, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." "Is this man dangerous?" Elena could have lied, should have lied, but Rose had always demanded the truth from her, even when it hurt. "Yes." "Has he hurt you?" "No." "Will he?" "I don't know." Elena sat back down, taking her grandmother's hand. "I don't think so, but I don't really know him yet." "But you're having dinner with him anyway." "It's part of the deal. He pays for your surgery. I have dinner with him once a week for 6 months. Rose's eyes widened. "Elena Cole, please tell me you didn't—" "It's just dinner," Elena interrupted. "Just conversation, that's all. He says he wants to understand why I helped him, what makes me different from the people in his life. I think he's lonely, honestly. Lonely and dangerous and probably a little bit broken. That's a terrible combination. I know. And you feel sorry for him." "I shouldn't," Elena said. "He's killed people, Grandma. He runs a criminal organization. He's exactly the kind of man you taught me to avoid." "But," Rose prompted, "but when he looks at me, I don't feel scared. I feel seen." Elena's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Everyone else in this city looks through me. I'm invisible to them. Just another broke girl in a cheap dress begging for help. But Damien sees me. Really sees me. And that's terrifying in a completely different way. Well, Rose squeezed her hand. Be careful, sweetheart. Men like that don't just want to see you. They want to own you. I know, Elena said. I won't let him. But even as she said it, she wondered if she was lying. Vincent picked her up at exactly 6:30 in the now familiar Mercedes. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the city lights reflected in the wet streets like scattered jewels. They drove to a restaurant in the West Village, a small Italian place tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. The kind of neighborhood spot that locals treasured and tourists never found. Damien was already there, sitting at a corner table with a glass of red wine. He dressed casually again, dark jeans, a gray sweater that matched his eyes, no tie. He stood when she entered, and Elena noticed every woman in the restaurant tracking the movement. You look tired, he said as she sat down. That's a terrible way to greet someone. It's honest. How's Rose? Nervous about Monday, trying not to show it, Elena accepted the menu from a waiter who appeared instantly. She asked if you were dangerous. What did you tell her? The truth. Damien's eyebrows rose. Which is? That yes, you're dangerous, but I don't think you'll hurt me. Elena met his gaze. Was I wrong? No, Damien said quietly. You weren't wrong. They ordered, Elena choosing pasta because she was too tired to decode the rest of the menu, and settled into an easier rhythm than she'd expected. Damien asked about her childhood in Asheville, her decision to become a nurse, her relationship with Rose. He listened with the same intensity he brought to everything, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. Why nursing? He asked. Why not become a doctor? Couldn't afford medical school, and honestly, I like the nursing side better. Doctors diagnose and prescribe. Nurses actually take care of people. Elena twirled pasta around her fork. There's more human connection in it. You need that, the connection. Doesn't everyone? Most people want it, Damien said. Few people are brave enough to actually pursue it. It requires vulnerability. Says the man who surrounds himself with armed guards. Exactly. His smile was self-aware. I'm a coward in the ways that matter. The conversation drifted to safer topics, books, movies, the neighborhood where her new apartment was located. Damien had opinions on everything, most of them surprisingly thoughtful. He read literary fiction and watched foreign films and had spent a semester studying philosophy at Columbia before his father's death had pulled him into the family business. Do you regret it? Elena asked. Not finishing school? Every day. Damien refilled their wine glasses. I would have been a terrible philosopher, but a happy one. Instead, I'm an effective criminal and a miserable one. You could walk away. Could I? His expression darkened. You don't understand how this works, Elena. The moment I took over from my father, I painted a target on my back that doesn't wash off. I have enemies who would kill my entire family if they thought I'd gone soft. I have business partners who'd betray me the second I showed weakness. Walking away isn't an option. It's suicide. That's a lonely way to live. It's the only way I know. They finished dinner and walked along the rain-slick streets. Damien had dismissed Vincent for the night, insisting he could manage the 6 blocks to Elena's apartment without an armed escort. The city felt different in the rain, quieter, more intimate, like a secret being shared. Thank you for tonight, Elena said as they reached her building. It was actually nice. You sound surprised. I am. I expected it to feel like an obligation, but it didn't. She hesitated, then added, You're not what I thought you'd be. What did you think I'd be? Scarier, more arrogant, less human. Damien laughed, the sound genuine and a little bit sad. Give it time. The monster's still in here, just hidden better than most. He walked her to the door but didn't try to come inside. Instead, he caught her hand, the same gentle touch from the garden, and lifted it to his lips. The kiss was old-fashioned and oddly sweet, completely at odds with everything she knew about him. Your grandmother's surgery will go perfectly, he said. Dr. Chen is the best. Rose will be fine. How can you be so sure? Because I don't accept any other outcome. He released her hand. Get some sleep, Elena. Monday will be a long day. She watched him walk away into the rain, hands in his pockets, completely unbothered by the weather. A man comfortable in his own darkness. Elena went upstairs and called the hospital to check on Rose one more time. Everything was stable. The nurses were optimistic. Dr. Chen had stopped by earlier to answer questions and reassure her grandmother that the surgery was routine. Routine. A 4 to 6 hour operation that would either save Rose's life or end it. Elena tried not to think about the statistics, the percentage points that separated success from failure. She fell asleep on the couch with her phone in her hand, waiting for Monday to arrive. The surgery began at 7 a.m. Elena wasn't allowed in the operating room, so she sat in the surgical waiting area with a coffee she didn't drink and a magazine she didn't read. The hours crawled by like they were wading through tar. At 9:30, a nurse came out to say everything was proceeding as expected. At 11:15, another update. They'd successfully replaced the valve and were beginning to close. At 1:45 p.m., Dr. Chen emerged in her surgical scrubs, mask pulled down, looking tired but satisfied. Elena, your grandmother is in recovery. The surgery was a complete success. Elena's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the plastic chair, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. Dr. Chen knelt beside her. She's going to be fine. Better than fine. Once she heals, she'll have the heart function of someone 20 years younger. You saved her life by bringing her here. Damien saved her life, Elena managed to say. You both did, Dr. Chen said gently. Now come on, let's go see her. Rose was barely conscious, groggy from anesthesia, but alive and smiling when she saw Elena. Hey, baby girl, she slurred. Did we win? We won, Elena said, gripping her grandmother's hand like a lifeline. You're going to be fine, Grandma. You're going to be just fine. She stayed at the hospital all day, watching Rose sleep, talking to nurses, memorizing the steady rhythm of the heart monitor that proved her grandmother was alive. At some point, someone brought her food. At some point, the sun went down outside the windows. Elena barely noticed. Her phone buzzed around 8 p.m. A text from Damien. I heard the news. Congratulations. Take all the time you need. Elena typed back with shaking fingers. Thank you for everything. I'll never be able to repay you. You already are. Rest, Elena. I'll see you next Friday. She put the phone away and went back to watching her grandmother breathe, each rise and fall of her chest a miracle that Damien Moretti had paid for. The next morning, Elena woke up in the hospital chair with a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders. Rose was awake and alert, complaining about the IV in her arm and demanding real food instead of ice chips. There's my girl, Elena said, stretching the kinks out of her neck. How do you feel? Like someone cracked open my chest and rearranged my insides, Rose said, which, technically, they did. But alive, Ellie. I feel alive. They spent the morning talking and laughing, and Elena realized she hadn't seen her grandmother this animated in months. The color was already returning to her face, the light coming back to her eyes. Dr. Chen had been right. Rose was going to recover fully. Around noon, a delivery arrived. A massive bouquet of white roses and lilies, elegant and expensive, with a card that read, For Rose, who raised someone extraordinary. May you have many more years to be proud of her. DM Rose read the card twice, then looked at Elena with that sharp, knowing expression. He's in love with you, sweetheart. He barely knows me. Some people fall in love with ideas before they fall in love with people. That man has decided you're worth saving. That's dangerous, Elena, because men like that don't just save you, they claim you. I won't let him. I hope you're strong enough to mean that, Rose said, because I think he's stronger than you realize. Elena thought about Damien's gray eyes, his gentle touch, the way he'd said, I don't accept any other outcome, like he could bend reality through sheer force of will. She thought about the man bleeding on a subway platform and the man who'd kissed her hand in the rain, and she wondered which version was real. Maybe they both were. Maybe that was the problem. 3 weeks after the surgery, Rose was strong enough to move to a rehabilitation facility in Manhattan. Elena had started working as a nursing assistant at a clinic in Brooklyn, taking the early shift so she could spend afternoons with her grandmother. The routine was exhausting but manageable, and for the first time in years, Elena felt like she could breathe without the weight of impending loss crushing her chest. The Friday dinners with Damien had become a strange constant in her life. They never went to the same restaurant twice, but the pattern was always identical. Vincent would pick her up at 6:30, Damien would be waiting at a corner table, and they'd spend 2 hours talking about everything except the obvious questions hanging between them. He never touched her beyond that hand kiss at her door. He never pushed for more than conversation. And yet Elena could feel something building, some tension that pulled tighter each time they met. On the sixth Friday, Damien took her to a rooftop bar in Chelsea with views of the Hudson River. The November wind was bitter, but heaters stationed around the perimeter kept the outdoor seating comfortable. Elena had finally bought herself a decent coat with her first paycheck, and she felt almost normal sitting across from him in the flickering firelight. "You look different," Damien observed, studying her over the rim of his whiskey glass. "Lighter. My grandmother's alive and getting stronger every day. I have a job, an apartment, a life that doesn't revolve around crisis management. Of course I look lighter. It suits you." He set down his glass. "How's the clinic?" "Busy. We serve a lot of uninsured patients, so there's always more work than we can handle. But the staff is good, and the doctors actually care." Elena paused. "One of them asked me out yesterday." Damien's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Did you accept?" "No, I told him I was seeing someone." She immediately regretted the words. "I mean, not seeing someone, just that I have these Friday commitments, and it wouldn't be fair to—" "Elena," Damien's voice was quiet. "Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "With this arrangement, with our dinners. Are you happy, or are you just fulfilling an obligation?" She thought about it honestly. The truth was complicated. She should have hated these dinners, resented every minute spent with the man who'd essentially bought her time. But instead, she found herself looking forward to Fridays, wondering what Damien would say, where they'd go, what new piece of himself he'd accidentally reveal. "I'm not unhappy," she said carefully. "You're good company when you're not being terrifying. High praise. Don't let it go to your head." Elena wrapped her hands around her wine glass for warmth. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. I may not answer." "The man who stabbed you, on the subway platform, who was he?" Damien was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the river. When he finally spoke, his voice was devoid of emotion. "His name was Marco Salvetti. He worked for a rival family in Boston. They'd been trying to move into my territory for months, and I'd been blocking them at every turn. So they sent Marco to solve the problem permanently." "Why the subway? Why not somewhere more private?" "Because killing me in public was supposed to send a message, that I wasn't untouchable, that the Moretti name didn't protect me anymore." Damien's smile was cold. "They miscalculated. All they did was prove that I could survive an assassination attempt on a crowded train platform and walk away. That's a different kind of message." Elena felt sick. "And you killed him for it." I killed him, because if I didn't, I'd be dead within a week. In my world, mercy is interpreted as weakness. Weakness gets you killed." He turned to face her. "Does that disgust you?" "Yes," Elena said honestly, "but I also understand it, which disgusts me more." "Welcome to moral complexity." "I hate it." Damien laughed, and the sound was so genuine that several people at nearby tables turned to look. "You're the most honest person I've ever met. Do you know that?" "I just don't see the point in lying about how I feel. Most people lie because the truth makes them vulnerable. They think honesty is a weapon that others will use against them." He leaned forward. "But you wear your truth like armor. You don't care if people see who you really are because you're not ashamed of it." "Should I be?" "Never." His hand moved across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You're extraordinary, Elena. I meant what I said in that card to Rose." She raised someone extraordinary. The touch sent electricity up Elena's arm. She should have pulled away, maintained the distance that kept this arrangement safe and transactional. Instead, she let her fingers curl around his, just for a moment, feeling the warmth of his skin against the November cold. "Damien," she said softly, "what are we doing?" "Having dinner." "You know what I mean." He squeezed her hand once before releasing it. I'm doing exactly what I said I'd do. Getting to know you, understanding what makes you different. And then what? After 6 months, when our agreement ends? I don't know, Damien admitted. I've never planned that far ahead with anyone. The honesty of it should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark, unable to see how far the fall would be. They left the bar around 10, walking through the streets of Chelsea instead of calling Vincent. The city was alive with Friday night energy. People spilling out of restaurants and clubs, taxis honking, street vendors selling hot dogs and pretzels. Damien moved through it all with casual confidence, one hand in his pocket, the other occasionally touching the small of Elena's back to guide her around obstacles. Do you ever miss it? Elena asked. Being normal? Being able to walk down the street without looking over your shoulder? I've never been normal, Damien said. My father was already running the organization when I was born. I grew up with bodyguards and security protocols and knowing that my last name made me a target. This is the only life I've ever known. But if you could choose differently, I can't. There's no point in hypotheticals. He steered her around a group of drunk college students. But if I could, maybe I'd have finished that philosophy degree. Become a professor somewhere quiet. Spent my days arguing about Kant and Nietzsche instead of negotiating territorial disputes. You'd have been bored within a year. Probably. He smiled. I'm not built for peaceful. They reached Elena's building around 11. Damien walked her to the door as he always did, stopping just outside the entrance. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, making him look younger and somehow more dangerous at the same time. Thank you for tonight, Elena said. Next week I'll be in Miami for business. We'll have to skip Friday. Elena was surprised by the disappointment that flashed through her. That's fine. I can use the extra time with Rose. I'll be back the following Wednesday. Dinner that night instead? Okay. Damien reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in that gesture that was becoming familiar. Be safe, Elena. I'm always safe. No, he said quietly. You're always brave. There's a difference. He kissed her hand and walked away into the night, leaving Elena standing in the doorway wondering when exactly she'd stopped being afraid of him and started being afraid of what she felt when he was gone. The week without their Friday dinner felt strangely empty. Elena threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts at the clinic and spending every spare moment with Rose, who was recovering so well that the doctors were talking about discharging her to outpatient care within the month. But even surrounded by people, Elena found herself checking her phone for messages that didn't come, wondering what Damien was doing in Miami, whether he was safe. On Tuesday evening, she was leaving the clinic when she noticed a man watching her from across the street. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of lean build that came from street living rather than gym memberships. Their eyes met for a brief second before he turned and walked away. But something about the encounter made Elena's skin crawl. She called Vincent on her way home. He answered immediately. Miss Cole? Is everything all right? I think someone was following me outside the clinic. Describe him. Elena did, providing as much detail as she could remember. Vincent was silent for a moment. Go straight home and lock your doors. I'm sending someone to watch your building tonight. Vincent, I might be paranoid. It might have been nothing. In Mr. Moretti's absence, your safety is my responsibility. Indulge me, Miss Cole. Elena did as she was told, taking a cab instead of the subway and checking over her shoulder constantly. When she reached her apartment, she found a man in a dark suit already stationed in the lobby. He nodded to her politely, but didn't speak. That night, Elena slept badly, waking at every sound from the street below. In the morning, there was a different man in the lobby. They were taking her seriously. Wednesday arrived with cold rain that matched Elena's mood. She'd convinced herself she was being ridiculous, that the man on the street had been nobody, that Vincent was overreacting. But when she checked her phone during her lunch break, there was a message from Damien that made her heart stop. Change of plans. Something's come up. I need you to stay home tonight. Vincent will bring dinner. Elena called him immediately. He answered on the second ring, and she could hear voices in the background, urgent and angry. Damien, what's going on? Nothing you need to worry about. Just stay inside tonight. Promise me. I'm not a child. Tell me what's happening. Elena, his voice was sharp. I don't have time to argue. There's been a complication with some business associates. It's being handled, but until it is, I need to know you're safe. Please." The please convinced her more than any threat could have. "Okay, I'll stay home." "Thank you." The background noise intensified. "I have to go. I'll see you soon." He hung up before she could respond. Elena spent the rest of her shift distracted and anxious. When she got home that evening, Vincent was waiting in the lobby with takeout from an expensive Italian restaurant and an expression that gave nothing away. "Mr. Moretti sends his regrets about dinner," Vincent said as they rode the elevator up. "He's dealing with a situation that requires his immediate attention." "The man who was watching me on Tuesday, is this connected?" Vincent's silence was answer enough. "Vincent, please. I deserve to know if I'm in danger." The elevator doors opened. Vincent followed her to her apartment, waiting while she unlocked the door. Inside, he set the takeout on the counter and turned to face her with the most serious expression she'd seen from him. "Miss Cole, there are people who would like to hurt Mr. Moretti. One way to hurt him is to hurt the things he values. You have become one of those things. We've had dinner 6 times. How could I possibly be valuable enough to—" "Because he looks at you the way he's never looked at anyone," Vincent interrupted. "And in our world, that's a vulnerability that can be exploited. The man watching you on Tuesday works for the Salvetti family. Marco Salvetti's brothers, to be specific. They're trying to determine how important you are." Elena sat down hard on the couch. "This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm just a nursing assistant who happened to save his life." "You're the woman who made Damien Moretti smile," Vincent said. "Trust me, Miss Cole, that's far more significant than you realize. He left her with the food and a promise that someone would be watching her building around the clock." Elena picked at the pasta without tasting it, her mind spinning through the implications. She'd known Damien was dangerous, she'd known his world was violent, but she'd never considered that simply existing in his orbit might paint a target on her back. Her phone rang around 9. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. "Elena Cole?" The voice was male, smooth, with a Boston accent. "Yes? My name is Anthony Salvetti. I believe you know who I am." Elena's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "Just to talk. My brother Marco made a mistake attacking Damien Moretti. I understand that. But Damien's response was disproportionate. He didn't just kill Marco. He made an example of him. That kind of disrespect requires a response." "I have nothing to do with your family business." But you have something to do with Damien. That makes you relevant." Anthony's voice hardened. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to deliver a message for me. Tell Damien that if he wants to avoid further complications, he'll agree to a meeting. Neutral territory, both sides equal numbers. We can settle this like civilized people. And if he refuses, then we'll find other ways to get his attention, ways that involve people he cares about." A pause. "Do you understand what I'm saying, Miss Cole?" Elena's hand tightened on the phone. "I understand that you're threatening me. I'm offering you a chance to prevent violence. There's a difference." Anthony's tone shifted, becoming almost friendly. "You seem like a nice girl, good family, honest work, just trying to save your grandmother. You don't belong in Damien's world. So do yourself a favor, deliver the message and walk away. Before you get hurt." The line went dead. Elena sat frozen for a full minute before her brain started working again. She should call Damien immediately. She should tell Vincent. She should... Her phone rang again. Damien, this time. "Are you all right?" he asked without preamble. "Vincent just told me someone called your personal number." "Anthony Salvetti," Elena said, her voice shaking. "He wants to set up a meeting. He said if you refuse, there will be complications involving people you care about." Damien was silent for so long that Elena thought the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "Did he threaten you directly?" "He suggested I didn't belong in your world and should walk away before I get hurt." "He's right. You don't belong in this. And you're going to walk away, but not because he told you to." Damien's tone softened slightly. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you want out? Of our arrangement? Of these dinners? All of it? Because if you do, I'll let you go. I'll make sure you and Rose are protected, but I won't hold you to our agreement if you're in danger because of me." Elena thought about the past 6 weeks. The dinners, the conversations, the way Damien looked at her like she was something precious and rare. She thought about Rose's warning that men like him didn't just save you, they claimed you. She thought about the man on the street and Anthony Salvetti's smooth threats and the bodyguard in her lobby. She should say yes. She should take the out he was offering and run as far from this world as possible. No, she heard herself say, I don't want out. Elena, I'm not walking away because some criminal I've never met told me to. That's not who I am. Her voice grew stronger. You made me a promise, Damien. 6 months of dinners in exchange for saving my grandmother's life. I keep my promises and I expect you to keep yours. Even if it puts you in danger? You've had guards on me since Tuesday. I think I'm already in danger. The question is whether I'm going to let that control my choices. Elena stood up, pacing to the window. Besides, you said you'd protect me. Were you lying? Never. Then protect me, and let me decide what risks I'm willing to take. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost see him processing her words, recalculating whatever strategy he'd been planning. You're going to make me insane, he said finally. You know that, right? Good. Maybe then we'll be even. Damien laughed, and the sound eased some of the tension in Elena's chest. I'm coming back to New York tonight. We're having that dinner tomorrow, as planned. What about Miami? Miami can wait. You can't. A pause. Elena, I need you to understand something. Anthony Salvetti is not Marco. He's smarter, more strategic, and significantly more dangerous. This situation is going to escalate before it resolves. I can protect you, but that means following Vincent's instructions without question. Can you do that? Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. That's what makes this so complicated. They talked for another 20 minutes, Damien extracting promises that Elena would stay alert, check in regularly, and never go anywhere alone. By the time they hung up, Elena felt simultaneously safer and more terrified than she had since this whole thing began. She tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind replaying Anthony's words and Damien's promises. Somewhere in this city, two powerful men were circling each other like sharks, and Elena had somehow become the bait they were both interested in. Thursday arrived gray and cold. Elena called in sick to the clinic, the first time she'd ever done so, and spent the morning with Rose instead. Her grandmother was having a good day, strong enough to walk the rehabilitation facility's hallways without assistance, her color healthy and her eyes bright. You look terrible, Rose said bluntly. What's wrong? Elena told her everything, about Anthony Salvetti's call, about the guards, about Damien's warning. Rose listened in silence, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. You need to end this, Rose said when Elena finished. Right now. This man is going to get you killed. He's trying to keep me alive. By surrounding you with armed guards? By making you a target for his enemies? Rose grabbed Elena's hand. Sweetheart, I love you more than my own life, and I'm grateful, so grateful, that Damien saved me. But not if the cost is you. Do you understand me? Not if the cost is you. I can't walk away now, Elena said. It's too late. Anthony Salvetti already knows who I am. Ending things with Damien won't make me safer. It'll just mean I don't have anyone protecting me. Then go back to Asheville. Leave New York entirely. And leave you here to recover alone? Rose's eyes filled with tears. I'm an old woman who's already lived a full life. You're 25 with everything ahead of you. If something happened to you because of me, because of that surgery, I'd never forgive myself. Elena knelt beside her grandmother's chair, both hands wrapping around Rose's. Nothing is going to happen to me. Damien won't let it. And I'm not leaving you. We're in this together, the way we've always been. You're falling in love with him, Rose said quietly. Aren't you? The question hit Elena like a physical blow. I barely know him. That's not an answer. Elena stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the November sky was threatening snow. I don't know what I feel. He's dangerous and probably terrible and has definitely killed people. But he's also the only person in this city who sees me as something more than invisible. When I'm with him, I feel like I matter. Like my thoughts and feelings and choices actually mean something to someone. That's how it starts, Rose said. The dangerous ones make you feel seen, make you feel special, and by the time you realize you're trapped, It's too late to escape. What if I don't want to escape? Then I hope you're strong enough to survive what comes next. Damien picked her up at 7 that evening. No Vincent, no guards, just him in a black car that he drove himself. He looked tired, lines of stress visible around his eyes. But his smile when he saw her was genuine. "Get in," he said. "We're going somewhere different tonight." "Where?" "You'll see." They drove north out of Manhattan, crossing the George Washington Bridge into New Jersey. The city lights fell away behind them, replaced by suburban sprawl, and then gradually by darker, quieter roads lined with trees. Elena watched the landscape change, wondering where he was taking her, whether she should be nervous. "I'm not kidnapping you," Damien said, reading her expression. "I just thought you might want to get away from the city for a few hours." "Well, won't that make it harder to protect me?" "Nobody knows we're here except Vincent, and he's 3 cars behind us. We're as safe as we can be." He glanced at her. "How's Rose?" "Worried about me. She thinks I should end our arrangement." "She's probably right." "Probably, but I'm not going to." Damien's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Why not?" "Because I keep my promises. And because—" Elena hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option left. "Because I don't want to." They pulled into the driveway of a house about an hour outside the city. It was modest by Damien's standards, a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters surrounded by woods on 3 sides. Lights glowed warmly in the windows. "Where are we?" Elena asked. "Somewhere I come when I need to think. When the city gets too loud." Damien killed the engine. "I've never brought anyone here before." The weight of that admission settled over Elena like snow. He was showing her something private, something vulnerable, letting her see a piece of himself that he kept hidden from everyone else. Inside, the house was simply furnished but comfortable. Hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, furniture that looked lived in rather than decorative. The kitchen was small but well equipped, and Damien moved through it with easy familiarity, pulling out ingredients for dinner. "You cook?" Elena asked, surprised. "When I can. It's meditative." He handed her a glass of wine. "My mother taught me. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was a man who'd always be dependent on others. She valued independence above almost everything." "Is she still alive?" "Cancer, 5 years ago." Damien's expression flickered. "She never approved of the family business, but she understood why I couldn't walk away from it. She died knowing I was trapped in a life she'd tried to protect me from. That's a special kind of failure." Elena moved closer, setting down her wine to take his hand. "She knew you loved her. That's not failure. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's all we have." They cooked together, Damien instructing her on how to prepare fresh pasta while he handled the sauce. It was domestic and strange and utterly unlike any of their previous dinners. Here, in this house outside the city, Damien seemed different, younger, less burdened, almost normal. They ate at a small table by the fireplace, talking about inconsequential things. Favorite foods, childhood memories, the first albums they'd ever bought. Damien told stories about growing up in Queens, about his mother's insistence on education despite his father's dismissal of it as useless. Elena shared memories of Rose teaching her to bake, of summer nights catching fireflies in mason jars, of the mother she barely remembered except in fragments and photographs. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" Damien asked. "To before everything got complicated?" "All the time," Elena admitted. "But I wouldn't trade what I have now. Rose is alive because things got complicated. That's worth everything." "Even the danger?" "Even the danger." After dinner, they sat on the couch in front of the fire, the space between them smaller than it had ever been. Elena could feel the heat radiating from Damien's body, could smell his cologne mixed with wood smoke and wine. When he turned to look at her, his gray eyes were serious. "I meant what I said about protecting you," he said quietly. "Whatever happens with the Salvettis, you won't be harmed. I give you my word." "What's going to happen?" "I don't know yet. Anthony wants a meeting, which means he's either planning to negotiate or planning a trap. I'm leaning toward trap." Damien's jaw tightened. "But regardless of what he wants, this ends one way or another, soon." "Will more people die?" "Probably." "Will you be one of them?" Damien reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with heartbreaking gentleness. "I don't plan to be." But in my world, plans don't always matter. Elena caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. Then don't go to the meeting. Let someone else handle it. Stay safe. If I don't go, they'll interpret it as weakness. And weak men in my position don't last long. He shifted closer until their faces were inches apart. But I appreciate the concern. It's more than concern, Elena whispered. I know. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. That's what terrifies me. He kissed her then, finally, after weeks of controlled distance and careful boundaries. His lips were soft and warm, tasting of wine and something darker, something that felt like inevitability. Elena kissed him back without thinking, without analyzing, just feeling the rush of want that she'd been suppressing since the moment he'd looked at her on that subway platform. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. This is a bad idea, he said. Terrible, Elena agreed. You should run, far and fast. I should. Neither of them moved. They stayed like that for a long moment, caught in the space between what they should do and what they wanted. Finally, Damien pulled back, his expression conflicted. I need to take you home, he said, before I make this worse. What if I don't want to go home? Elena, his voice was rough. You don't understand what you're asking for. Then explain it to me. If this goes further, if we cross that line, you become mine, not in the romantic comedy sense, in the real, dangerous, possibly fatal sense. My enemies will target you. My allies will judge you. Every decision you make will be colored by your association with me. And I can't... He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. I can't do that to you, not when you have a chance at a normal life. Elena stood too, moving to stand beside him. What if I don't want a normal life? You should. But I don't. She took his hand again, forcing him to look at her. I spent 25 years being invisible, Damien, playing it safe, keeping my head down, never asking for anything I didn't desperately need. And where did it get me? Alone, broke, and watching my grandmother die because I couldn't afford to save her. You changed that. You saw me when nobody else did. You helped me when you had no reason to. And now you're trying to push me away for my own good, but you don't get to decide what's good for me. I do. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing something I want instead of something I need. And I want this. I want you. She stepped closer. Unless you don't want me. In which case, tell me now, and I'll walk away. Damien stared at her, his expression a mixture of desire and desperation and something that looked almost like pain. I've wanted you since the moment you touched me on that platform. Since you looked at me without fear and told me to shut up and let you help. I've been halfway in love with you for weeks, and it's terrifying because I don't know how to protect something I care about this much. The confession broke something open in Elena's chest. She kissed him again, harder this time, pouring everything she felt into it. The fear, the want, the reckless certainty that this was right even if it was also insane. Damien kissed her back with matching intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer like he could merge them into one person if he just held on tight enough. When they finally broke apart, both shaking, Damien pressed his lips to her forehead. Stay with me tonight, he whispered. Here, just for tonight. Okay, Elena breathed. They didn't sleep much. They talked until dawn, curled together on the couch, sharing secrets and fears and dreams they'd never told anyone else. Damien told her about the first time he'd killed someone, the way it had hollowed him out and rebuilt him into someone colder. Elena told him about watching her mother die, about the way grief had carved trenches through her childhood. They compared scars, literal and figurative, mapping the damage that had made them who they were. As the sun rose over the trees, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, Damien pulled Elena closer. This doesn't change the danger, he said. If anything, it makes it worse. I know. The Salvettis will come after you harder now. Let them try. Damien smiled against her hair. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can I be both? You definitely are. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, fingers intertwined on the center console. The real world was waiting. The guards, the threats, the meeting that would decide whether this tentative peace lasted or exploded into violence. But for those few hours in the car, they existed in a bubble where none of it mattered. Vincent was waiting when they arrived at Elena's building, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Moretti, we have a situation. Anthony Salvetti has moved up the timeline. He wants to meet tomorrow night." Damien's hand tightened on Elena's. "Where?" "The Pier 17 warehouse. Midnight." "Classic. Dramatic and easy to ambush." Damien turned to Elena. "You're staying here. Vincent will have a full team on the building." "No arguments," Vincent added. "Miss Cole, this is not negotiable." Elena wanted to protest, to insist she could help somehow, but she saw the fear in Damien's eyes and understood. This was his world, his rules, his fight. All she could do was trust him to come back. "Be careful," she said softly. Damien kissed her, right there in front of Vincent and the morning traffic, claiming her in a way that left no doubt about what she meant to him. "Always," he promised. Then he was gone, and Elena was left standing on the sidewalk watching the black car disappear into the city, wondering if she'd ever see him alive again. Elena spent the day trapped in her apartment like a prisoner. 3 guards rotated shifts in the hallway, and Vincent had installed additional security cameras in the stairwells. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart stopped, terrified it would be news that Damien was dead. Instead, the messages were mundane updates from the clinic asking when she'd return, a text from Rose's physical therapist about her grandmother's progress, a notification about her electric bill. Nothing from Damien. By evening, Elena was climbing the walls. She'd cleaned the apartment twice, reorganized her closet, attempted to read 3 different books without absorbing a single word. The waiting was worse than any threat could have been. At 7 p.m., her phone finally rang. Not Damien, Owen. Elena stared at the name on the screen, momentarily confused. Owen Mitchell. Her childhood sweetheart, her first kiss, the boy who'd promised to wait for her when she'd left for nursing school. They'd broken up 2 years ago when the distance became too much, but they'd stayed friendly, exchanging occasional texts about their lives. She answered, desperate for any distraction. "Owen? Ellie! Finally! I've been trying to reach you for weeks." His voice was warm and familiar, triggering memories of summer nights and stolen kisses behind the movie theater. "Your grandmother told me you were in New York. I'm here too. Can you believe it? I got transferred to the Manhattan office last month." "That's great," Elena said automatically, her mind still half focused on Damien and the warehouse, and midnight approaching like an execution. "I was thinking we could meet up, grab dinner, catch up properly. I've missed you, Ellie. And honestly, being in this city alone is harder than I thought. It would be nice to see a friendly face." Elena opened her mouth to refuse, then stopped. Damien had told her to stay in the apartment, but he hadn't said she couldn't have visitors. And Owen was safe, normal, a reminder of the life she'd left behind. Maybe that's exactly what she needed right now. "Actually, that sounds perfect, but I can't leave my building tonight. Could you come here instead? I'll order takeout." "Even better. Text me the address." Owen arrived 40 minutes later with a bottle of wine and the same easy smile she remembered. He'd filled out since high school, trading his teenage lankiness for the solid build of someone who'd discovered gyms and protein shakes. His blonde hair was shorter, more professional, and he wore business casual like he'd been born to it. The guard in the hallway checked his ID before letting him pass, which Owen found amusing. "Fancy security for a Brooklyn apartment," he said as Elena let him in. "You dating a celebrity or something?" "Something like that." Elena took the wine, grateful for something to do with her hands. "How are you? Tell me everything about the New York adventure." They settled on the couch, falling into the comfortable rhythm of old friends. Owen worked in finance now, some complicated job involving market analysis that Elena didn't fully understand. He'd broken up with his college girlfriend 6 months ago and was enjoying being single in a city full of possibilities. He asked about Rose's surgery, and Elena gave him the abbreviated version. A generous benefactor, a miracle recovery, a new lease on life. "That's incredible," Owen said. "I remember how worried you were. Rose basically raised you after your mom died, right?" "Right." Elena poured them both wine. "She's everything to me." "I'm glad she's okay." Owen shifted closer, his knee brushing hers. "And I'm glad you're here. I know we ended things, but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. About us. Whether we gave up too easily." Elena's stomach dropped. Owen, hear me out. He took her hand, his touch gentle and achingly familiar. We were good together, Ellie. We understood each other. And yeah, the distance was hard, but we're both in New York now. We could try again. Do it right this time. Before Elena could respond, before she could explain about Damien and danger and the fact that her life was currently a crime thriller instead of a romance, Owen leaned in and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and utterly wrong. Elena pulled back immediately, but not before the apartment door burst open and Damien walked in with Vincent right behind him. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Damien's eyes went from Elena to Owen to their joined hands, his expression transforming from concern to something dark and murderous. Get away from her, Damien said quietly. His voice was calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. Now! Owen stood up, confused and defensive. Who the hell are you? The man who's about to break every bone in your hand if you don't let go of her in the next 3 seconds. Damien, stop! Elena stepped between them, her heart pounding. This is Owen. He's a friend from home. We were just talking. That wasn't talking. It was a misunderstanding. She turned to Owen, whose face had gone pale as he finally processed the guards in the hallway and Damien's barely controlled fury. Owen, you should go. Ellie, what's going on? Is this guy threatening you? No, yes, it's complicated. Elena grabbed Owen's coat, practically shoving it into his arms. Please just go. I'll call you later and explain. Owen looked between them, his confusion shifting to hurt. You're with him? This is the benefactor? Owen? Jesus, Ellie. What happened to you? This guy looks like he'd kill someone for looking at you wrong. He would, Damien confirmed. And you're about to test that theory. Vincent stepped forward smoothly, his hand on Owen's shoulder. Mr. Mitchell, I'll escort you out. Miss Cole will contact you when it's convenient. Owen shrugged off Vincent's hand but moved toward the door. He stopped at the threshold, looking back at Elena with something like pity. Be careful, Ellie. Whatever this is, it's not healthy. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone with Damien's fury. What the hell was that? Damien demanded the second the door closed. I told you, an old friend who was kissing you in the apartment I'm paying for while I'm out preparing to risk my life to keep you safe. Damien's hands clenched into fists. Do you have any idea what it felt like to walk in here and see another man touching you? He kissed me. I didn't kiss him back. You didn't stop him fast enough. Elena's own temper flared. I pulled away immediately. And even if I hadn't, we're not together, Damien. We've had a few dinners and one night where we talked. That doesn't give you ownership over who I see or what I do. The hell it doesn't. Damien closed the distance between them in 2 strides. You said you were mine. Last night, in that house, you said you wanted this. Was that a lie? No, but what? You want me when it's convenient? When there's no safer option available? His eyes were storm dark with hurt beneath the anger. Owen's normal. Owen works in finance and probably has a 401k and will never bring danger to your door. I get it, Elena. I understand the appeal. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Elena felt tears prick her eyes. It's me being terrified. You're going to a meeting in 4 hours that could get you killed. I've been alone all day with nothing but my imagination and worst-case scenarios. Owen called and he was normal and safe, and for 5 seconds I wanted to pretend my life was still simple. That's all it was. Damien's expression softened slightly. I told you I'd come back. You can't promise that. Not in your world. I can, and I do. He cupped her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I am coming back to you, Elena. Whatever happens at that warehouse, I am walking out alive because I have something to live for now. Do you understand me? What if you're wrong? I'm not. Damien? He kissed her hard, swallowing whatever protest she'd been forming. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I'm trying. Try harder. He released her, stepping back. And for the record, if Owen Mitchell ever touches you again, I will break his hand. That's not a threat. That's a promise. That's psychotic. That's honest. Damien checked his watch. I have to go. Vincent will stay with you until I get back. Take me with you. Absolutely not. Damien, please, I can't just sit here waiting to find out if you're alive or dead. Let me come with you. I'll stay in the car. I won't interfere. I need to be there. No. The word was final. This is not negotiable, Elena. You stay here where you're safe. That's the deal. Since when do you get to dictate deals? Since I'm the one walking into a potential ambush. He moved to the door, then stopped, turning back. I love you. I know it's too soon and I know it's insane, and I know you probably don't feel the same way yet, but I need you to know, just in case, I love you. Before Elena could respond, he was gone. She stood frozen in the empty apartment, Damien's words echoing in her head. I love you. 3 words that changed everything and nothing simultaneously. 3 words that made the waiting even more unbearable. Vincent appeared in the doorway, his expression sympathetic. Miss Cole, I have orders to keep you here. Please don't make this difficult. Vincent, you have to let me go with him. I cannot. He could die tonight. He could die any night. That's the life he chose. Vincent's voice gentled. But he's good at what he does, Miss Cole, the best I've ever seen. If anyone can walk into a Salvetti trap and walk out again, it's Damien Moretti. Elena sank onto the couch, her whole body shaking. What if he doesn't? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I've known Mr. Moretti for 15 years. I watched him take over from his father and consolidate power against rivals who should have crushed him. I've seen him survive assassination attempts, FBI investigations, and betrayals from his own people. He doesn't lose, Miss Cole. He doesn't know how. Everyone loses eventually. Not tonight. Vincent moved to the window, checking the street below. He has too much to live for now. You gave him that. The hours until midnight crawled by like wounded animals. Elena tried to distract herself with television, with work emails, with anything that would stop her imagination from conjuring images of Damien bleeding in some warehouse while his enemies stood over him. Nothing worked. At 11:30, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? Miss Cole, Anthony Salvetti. We spoke earlier this week. Elena's blood turned to ice. What do you want? Just to chat while we wait for your boyfriend to arrive. He is still your boyfriend, right? Even after that touching scene with Owen Mitchell earlier? The bottom dropped out of Elena's stomach. You've been watching me. I've been watching everyone connected to Damien Moretti. You're surprisingly interesting for a nursing assistant from North Carolina. Pure, uncomplicated, exactly the kind of weakness a man like Damien can't afford. Anthony's voice was pleasant, conversational. Tell me, does he know about your father? About how Richard Cole refused to help save Rose? About how you were so desperate that you accepted help from a criminal? Get to the point. The point is that you don't belong in this world, Miss Cole. You're a liability, a soft spot that will get Damien killed. A pause. Unless you remove yourself from the equation. I'm not going anywhere. I thought you might say that, which is why I've arranged a little demonstration of what happens to people who get too close to the Moretti family. His voice hardened. Check your other phone, the one Damien gave you for emergencies. Elena's hands shook as she found the second phone in her purse. One new message, a video file. She pressed play and immediately wished she hadn't. The video showed a man tied to a chair in what looked like the same Pier 17 warehouse where the meeting was supposed to happen. His face was bloody, unrecognizable, but his voice when he screamed was definitely Owen's. No, Elena whispered. Your friend made the mistake of leaving your building and going to a bar to drown his sorrows. My men were waiting. Now he's going to serve as a lesson about the cost of getting involved with Damien's people. Anthony's tone was almost apologetic. If you'd like to save him, Miss Cole, I suggest you come to the warehouse, alone. We'll trade Owen's life for your cooperation. What cooperation? A simple message to Damien that you're leaving him, that you want nothing more to do with his world, delivered convincingly, in person and on video, so he knows you mean it. Anthony paused. Do that, and Owen goes free. Refuse, and we'll send pieces of him to your apartment until Damien gets the message anyway. The phone went dead. Elena sat motionless, the video frozen on Owen's terrified face. This was her fault. She'd invited him over, put him in danger, made him visible to people who used innocent lives as leverage. Now he was going to die because of her, unless she did something. Vincent was in the hallway, coordinating with the other guards. Elena moved quietly to the bedroom, grabbing her coat and purse. The window opened onto a fire escape. She'd noticed it her first day here, but never thought she'd need to use it. Now it was her only option. The metal stairs were freezing and slick with ice. Elena climbed down as quietly as possible, her heart hammering against her ribs. 3 stories down, then a drop to the alley below that jarred her ankles but didn't break anything. She ran. The streets were busy enough even at this hour that she could blend into the crowd. She caught a cab 2 blocks away, giving the driver the address of Pier 17. Only as the city lights blurred past did she realize she had no plan beyond getting there. No weapon, no backup, no way to fight trained criminals who'd already proven they'd torture innocent people to make a point. But Owen was there because of her. And Damien was walking into a trap because of her. And she was done being the helpless victim everyone needed to protect. The cab dropped her 3 blocks from the warehouse. Elena walked the rest of the way, her breath coming out in white clouds in the frigid air. The pier was industrial and abandoned, the kind of location that screamed terrible things happen here in every crime show she'd ever watched. The warehouse door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cavernous and dark, except for a circle of light in the center. Owen was still tied to the chair, his head hanging forward. Around him stood 5 men in dark suits, all armed. And in the center, looking perfectly comfortable in the tableau of violence, stood Anthony Salvetti. He was younger than Elena expected, maybe 35, with the kind of polished handsomeness that belonged in boardrooms rather than warehouses. He smiled when he saw her. "Miss Cole, I'm impressed. Most people would have called Damien immediately." "Let Owen go," Elena said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I'm here. I'll deliver your message. Just let him go." In time, Anthony gestured to one of his men, who grabbed Elena's arm and dragged her into the light. "First, we wait for Damien. He should be arriving any minute now with his people. This will be much more effective if he sees you making your choice in person." "This wasn't the deal. I lied." Anthony's smile widened. "I do that. Now, here's what's going to happen. Damien will walk in expecting a negotiation. Instead, he'll find you standing with me, telling him that you want out. That you've realized his world is too dangerous, too violent, too wrong for someone like you. You'll be very convincing because Owen's life depends on it." Elena looked at Owen, who'd raised his head enough to meet her eyes. His face was a mess of bruises and blood, but he was conscious, aware, terrified. "I'm sorry," she whispered, touching. Anthony checked his watch. Any minute now. The warehouse door exploded inward. Damien entered like a force of nature, flanked by Vincent and 6 other men, all armed, all moving with military precision. His eyes found Elena immediately, and the fury that crossed his face was biblical. "Let her go," Damien said, his voice deadly calm. "Now." "Or what?" Anthony kept his hand on Elena's shoulder. "You'll start a war in the middle of a warehouse? How many of your people will die in the crossfire, Damien? How many of mine? And more importantly," he pressed a gun to Elena's temple, "are you willing to risk her?" Damien froze. Elena watched calculations flash across his face, saw him weighing options and finding them all terrible. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. "Anthony, think about this," Damien said carefully. "She's not part of our world. She's a civilian. Hurting her violates every code we operate under. You violated that code when you killed my brother in public. Made an example of him like he was nothing." Anthony's grip tightened. "This is about balance, Damien. About showing you what it feels like to lose something important. Then shoot me, not her." "Where's the poetry in that?" Anthony smiled. "No, I think I'll take something from you the way you took Marco from me. And Miss Cole has graciously volunteered to deliver a message first." He removed the gun from Elena's head and handed her a piece of paper. "Read it exactly as written. Or Owen dies. Then you die. Then Damien gets to live with the knowledge that he failed to protect either of you." Elena took the paper with shaking hands. The words swam before her eyes. "I can't do this anymore. Your world is too dark. I want out. Don't contact me again." She looked at Damien, trying to communicate everything she couldn't say. "I love you too. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Then she looked at Anthony, at the gun he'd aimed at Owen's head, at the certainty in his eyes that she'd comply. And Elena made a choice. She tore the paper in half. "No," she said clearly, "I won't read it. I won't lie to him. And you can shoot me or Owen or both of us, but I won't give you the satisfaction of breaking him." The warehouse erupted into chaos. Damien moved first, diving toward Elena as gunfire exploded from both sides. Anthony shoved her away, trying to aim, but Vincent was already there, tackling him to the ground. Elena hit the concrete hard. The breath knocked from her lungs. Above her, men fought and shot and died in a symphony of violence she couldn't track. Strong hands grabbed her, pulling her behind a stack of crates. Damien's face appeared above hers, checking for injuries, his hands running over her body with frantic efficiency. "Are you hurt?" "No, Owen. Vincent's got him." Damien pulled a gun from his holster, checking the magazine. "Stay down. Don't move until I come back for you." "Damien, wait!" He kissed her hard and fast, then disappeared into the chaos. Elena huddled behind the crates, listening to gunfire and shouting and the terrible sounds of combat. She couldn't see what was happening, could only pray that Damien was faster, smarter, better trained than the men trying to kill him. Seconds stretched into minutes. The gunfire slowed, then stopped. Silence fell over the warehouse like a shroud. Then footsteps. Coming closer. Elena held her breath, pressing herself against the crates, wishing she had a weapon or training or anything useful beyond sheer terror. Damien appeared around the corner, bloodied but alive. "It's over. Come on." He helped her stand, supporting her when her legs threatened to give out. The warehouse floor was littered with bodies, some dead, some wounded and being restrained by Damien's men. Anthony Salvetti sat against a wall with Vincent's gun pressed to his head, his expensive suit torn and blood-stained. Owen was free from the chair, being tended to by one of Damien's people who was apparently trained as a medic. He looked up when Elena approached, his expression a mixture of relief and horror. "Ellie, what the hell is going on?" "I'll explain everything later. Are you okay?" "They beat the shit out of me, but I'll live." Owen's eyes moved to Damien, who stood behind Elena like a dark guardian. "Is this real? Are you really with him?" "Yes," Elena said simply. "I'm sorry you got hurt because of me." "We'll get you home safely," Damien said to Owen. "Medical care, protection until this is resolved, compensation for your trouble. You have my word." "I don't want your money. I just want to go home to Nebraska and forget this night ever happened." Owen struggled to his feet, refusing Elena's help. "I hope you know what you're doing, Ellie, because this isn't love. This is madness." Maybe it was both. Elena watched Owen being escorted out by two of Damien's men, knowing she'd probably never see him again. The boy from her childhood was gone, replaced by a man who'd learned the hard way that her world had sharp edges. Damien was on the phone now, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. When he hung up, he moved to stand in front of Anthony. "You made a mistake tonight," Damien said quietly. "You threatened someone under my protection. Violated the code you accused me of breaking. Now you're going to face the consequences." "Kill me then." Anthony's smile was bloody but defiant. "Make me a martyr like my brother. Prove to everyone that Damien Moretti only knows violence." "I'm not going to kill you." Damien holstered his gun. "I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to let you live with the knowledge that you lost, that you gambled everything on breaking me and failed. And then I'm going to dismantle your organization piece by piece until the Salvetti name means nothing in this city. You can't. I can. I will." Damien turned to Vincent. "Take him to the safe house. I'll deal with him tomorrow." As Vincent dragged Anthony away, Damien finally turned his full attention to Elena. The fury was gone, replaced by exhaustion and something that looked like awe. "You tore up the paper," he said. "I told you I keep my promises." "You could have died." "So could you." Elena stepped closer, her hands finding his. "I wasn't going to let him use me to hurt you. Not for Owen, not for anyone." Damien pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking, felt the fear he'd been suppressing finally breaking through his control. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered into her hair. "Don't ever put yourself in danger like that. I can survive a lot of things, Elena, but I can't survive losing you." "Then don't give me reasons to heroically rescue myself." She pulled back enough to see his face. You said you loved me. I do. I love you too. Even though you're terrifying and dangerous and probably going to give me a heart attack before I'm 30. She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. But we need to establish some ground rules, like you not threatening to break Owen's hand. I'm not promising that. Damien, he kissed what's mine. He's lucky I didn't break his face. Elena sighed. This was her life now, loving a man who spoke about violence like other people spoke about the weather. She should probably be horrified. Instead, she felt strangely safe, wrapped in the arms of the most dangerous man in New York. Take me home, she said. The real home. That house outside the city. Elena, there's cleanup here. Vincent can handle it. Take me home. Damien studied her face, then nodded. Okay, let's go home. They left the warehouse together, stepping over the debris of Anthony Salvetti's failed plan. The night air was cold and clean, washing away the smell of gunpowder and blood. Somewhere in the city, Rose was sleeping peacefully in her rehabilitation facility, unaware that her granddaughter had just survived a mob execution. Somewhere else, Owen was being driven to a hospital, processing the fact that the girl he'd loved in high school had chosen a monster over safety. And Elena, caught between the person she used to be and the person she was becoming, held tight to Damien's hand and chose not to let go. They drove through the pre-dawn darkness in silence, both too exhausted and overwhelmed to speak. Elena's hands were still shaking from the adrenaline, her mind replaying the moment she'd torn that paper, the gunfire, the look on Damien's face when he'd thought she might die. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, watching the city lights give way to suburban sprawl and then to the dark silhouettes of trees against the lightening sky. When they finally reached the house, Damien killed the engine but didn't move to get out. He sat with his hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I almost lost you tonight, he said quietly. When I walked into that warehouse and saw Anthony with a gun to your head, I understood for the first time what real fear feels like. Not fear of dying. I've faced that 100 times. Fear of living in a world where you don't exist. Elena reached over, lacing her fingers through his. But you didn't lose me. I'm here. Because you made an insane choice that could have gotten you killed. He turned to look at her, and in his eyes she saw raw emotion he'd never shown before. Elena, I need you to understand something. I've built my entire life on control, on making calculated decisions and managing risk. But with you, I have no control. I can't predict what you'll do. I can't protect you from yourself. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could. Then maybe you need to trust me to protect myself sometimes. How? You walked into a trap with no weapon, no plan, no backup. I had you, Elena interrupted. I knew you'd come. I knew you'd find a way to get us both out. That's trust, Damien. That's what love looks like when you're not trying to control it. He pulled her across the console into his lap, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. I can't lose you. I won't survive it. Then don't make me choose between loving you and living my own life. Don't lock me in apartments and assign guards and treat me like I'm made of glass. I'm stronger than you think. I know you are. That's what scares me. Damien's lips found her temple, her cheek, her mouth. Promise me something. Promise me you'll never do anything that reckless again without at least telling me first. I promise to try. Elena, that's the best I can do. I'm not going to lie to you and say I'll always choose safety over what's right. That's not who I am. She cupped his face in her hands. But I promise I'll always choose to come back to you. Is that enough? Damien kissed her answer into existence, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they finally broke apart, the sun was beginning to rise over the trees, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. They spent that day tangled together in the house, sleeping and talking and slowly coming down from the terror of the night before. Damien made breakfast while Elena showered, and they ate in comfortable silence on the couch, her feet in his lap, both of them pretending that the real world didn't exist beyond these walls. But reality had a way of intruding. Around noon, Vincent called with updates. Anthony Salvetti was secured and being encouraged to contact his remaining family members with a message of surrender. The warehouse had been cleaned. Owen Mitchell was recovering in a private hospital under guard and had signed a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for enough money to start over anywhere he wanted. The local police had been quietly informed that the incident was resolved and required no further investigation. How does that work? Elena asked after Damien hung up. The police just let you handle vigilante justice in a warehouse? The police in this city understand that some things are better left to unofficial channels. They get paid to look the other way, and in exchange, violence stays contained to the people who choose this life. Damien set down his phone. It's not justice in the legal sense, but it's the closest thing my world offers. That's depressing. That's reality. He pulled her closer. But you don't have to be part of it, Elena. After what happened last night, if you want to walk away, I'll make sure you and Rose are protected. I'll set up a trust fund, relocate you both somewhere safe, give you the normal life you deserve. Stop. Elena sat up, turning to face him fully. I'm not leaving you. I thought I made that clear when I tore up Anthony's script. That was in the heat of the moment. Now that you've had time to think, I've had plenty of time to think. I've been thinking since the moment I met you on that subway platform. And here's what I know. You're dangerous and possessive, and you operate in moral gray areas that would make most people uncomfortable. But you're also the only person who's ever seen me as something more than invisible. You saved my grandmother's life when my own father wouldn't. You trust me with the truth, even when it's ugly. And you love me in a way that's probably unhealthy, but feels more real than anything I've ever experienced. She took his hands. So no, I'm not walking away. You're stuck with me. Damien's expression cycled through disbelief, hope, and something that looked dangerously close to tears. You're going to destroy me. Probably, but you'll enjoy it. He laughed, the sound rough and genuine, and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like coffee and promise, and the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet. They returned to the city that evening. Elena needed to see Rose, and Damien had business to attend to. The kind of business she was learning not to ask too many questions about. But before they parted ways, he made her promise to have dinner at his penthouse the following Friday. Their arrangement had technically ended after the warehouse, but neither of them wanted to stop the tradition they'd built. Rose was sitting up in bed when Elena arrived at the rehabilitation facility, looking stronger than she had in months. Her color was good, her eyes were bright, and she was arguing with a physical therapist about whether she needed to use a walker for another week. There's my stubborn girl, Elena said from the doorway. Rose's face lit up. Ellie! I didn't expect you until tomorrow. Her smile faded as she got a better look at Elena's face. What happened? You look like you haven't slept in days. Elena dismissed the physical therapist with a promise that she'd make sure Rose followed all the rules, then closed the door and told her grandmother everything. About the warehouse, about Anthony Salvetti, about Owen getting caught in the crossfire, about tearing up the paper in Damien's declaration of love, and the choice she'd made to stay in his world despite the danger. Rose listened in silence, her expression cycling through horror and concern, and finally resignation. When Elena finished, her grandmother was quiet for a long moment. You love him, Rose said finally. It wasn't a question. Yes. Even knowing what he is? What he does? Especially knowing that? Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Grandma, I know you're worried. I know this isn't the life you wanted for me, but I've spent 25 years playing it safe, being invisible, accepting scraps from people who should have loved me better. Damien sees me, really sees me, and yes, his world is dangerous, but at least it's honest about what it is. Rose reached out, taking Elena's hand in both of hers. I raised you to be strong, independent, to never need a man to save you. And here you are, in love with someone who could get you killed. He's not saving me, Grandma. We're saving each other. Elena squeezed her grandmother's hands. I know it's not perfect. I know there will be more danger, more situations where I have to make impossible choices, but I'd rather have a complicated life with him than a safe, empty life without him. Oh, baby girl, Rose's eyes filled with tears. You're braver than I ever was. When your grandfather died, I shut down. I stopped taking risks, stopped believing in anything beyond survival. And I raised you to do the same, to be careful, to protect yourself, to never give anyone the power to hurt you. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe I taught you to be so safe that you forgot how to really live. You taught me to survive. Damien's teaching me to live. I need both. Rose pulled Elena into a hug, holding her the way she had when Elena was a child and the world felt too big and scary. Then I'm happy for you, terrified but happy. Just promise me you'll be careful. I promise. And promise me that if he ever hurts you, ever makes you feel small or scared or less than you are, you'll leave. No matter how much you love him. I promise that too. They talked for another hour, Rose sharing stories about Elena's grandfather, a man Elena had never known but who'd apparently been quite the rebel in his day. A factory worker who'd organized unions and stood up to bosses and loved Rose with a fierce devotion that bordered on obsessive. He sounds a lot like Damien, Elena observed. That's what worries me. But Rose was smiling. I loved your grandfather more than my own life. But loving a man like that, it's not easy. It's not safe. You have to be strong enough to stand beside him without losing yourself. Do you think you can do that? I guess we'll find out. Over the next few weeks, Elena settled into a new rhythm. She continued working at the clinic, spending her days helping patients who couldn't afford traditional health care. She visited Rose every evening, watching her grandmother grow stronger and healthier with each passing day. And on Fridays, she had dinner with Damien, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at his penthouse, once at a cooking class where they made terrible pasta and laughed until they couldn't breathe. The danger didn't disappear entirely. There were still guards, still precautions, still moments when Damien had to leave abruptly to handle situations he wouldn't explain. But Elena was learning to navigate his world, understanding which questions to ask and which silences to respect. One evening in early December, Damien took her to his penthouse for what he claimed was just another Friday dinner. But when Elena walked in, she found the space transformed. Candles everywhere, soft music playing, and a table set for two with flowers and champagne. What's this? She asked. Dinner. Damien appeared from the kitchen wearing an apron over his suit, looking so domestic and ridiculous that Elena had to bite back a laugh. I'm cooking for you tonight. No restaurants, no staff, just us. You're wearing an apron. Vincent gave it to me as a joke. I'm choosing to embrace it. He pulled out her chair. Sit. Let me take care of you for once. The meal was simple but perfect. Pasta with homemade sauce, fresh bread, salad. Damien had clearly put thought into every detail, and Elena felt something shift in her chest as she watched him move around the kitchen with surprising competence. Where did you learn to cook like this? She asked. My mother. She insisted that everyone in the family know how to feed themselves, said it was a form of independence. Damien poured wine. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but now it's one of the few good memories I have of her. Tell me more about her. So he did. Over dinner, Damien shared stories Elena had never heard, about a woman who'd loved fiercely and fought constantly with her husband over the family business. A woman who'd wanted her children to have normal lives but understood that normal wasn't possible with the Moretti name. A woman who'd died knowing her son was trapped in a life she'd tried to protect him from. She would have liked you, Damien said. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't take my shit, someone strong enough to call me out when I was being an idiot. I do that regularly. I know. It's one of your best qualities. After dinner, they moved to the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city lights spreading out like fallen stars. Damien pulled Elena into his arms, and they swayed to the music, not quite dancing, but moving together in a rhythm that felt natural. I have something for you, Damien said eventually. If it's expensive, I'm going to be angry. It's not expensive. It's important. There's a difference. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Elena's heart stopped. Before you panic, it's not what you think. He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a key. What's this? A key to this apartment, to the house outside the city, to every property I own. Damien's expression was serious. I want you to have access to my life, Elena. All of it. The good parts and the ugly parts. No more secrets, no more locked doors. If you're going to be with me, you deserve to know exactly what you're getting into. Elena took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. This is a big gesture. It's a necessary one. I'm asking you to build a life with me. That means you need to see all of it. The legitimate businesses, the less legitimate ones, the way I operate, the choices I make. And then you can decide if it's something you can live with. And if I can't, then I'll find a way to change, or I'll let you go, whichever you need. Damien took her free hand. but I'm hoping you'll stay." Elena looked at the key, then at the man holding her hand, then out at the city that had become her home in the strangest way possible. 3 months ago, she'd been a broke nursing assistant with a dying grandmother and no prospects. Now she stood in a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, holding a key to a life she'd never imagined wanting. "I'll stay," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "Rose moves in with me, into the apartment you're paying for. I want her close when she's discharged from rehab. I want to take care of her the way she took care of me." "Done. I'll have the apartment modified for accessibility. Anything else?" "Stop asking if I'm sure about this. I'm sure. I've been sure since I tore up that paper in the warehouse. Maybe even before that." Elena stepped closer until she could feel his heartbeat against hers. "I love you, Damian Moretti. Your whole complicated, dangerous, impossible life. And I'm choosing to stay in it. So stop giving me exits I'm never going to take." Damian kissed her with enough intensity to make the city lights blur. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "6 months ago, I got stabbed on a subway platform and thought I was going to die in the most undignified way possible. Instead, a girl with kind eyes and steady hands saved my life. Now she's saving it again in a completely different way. That's my job, apparently, saving Damian Moretti from himself. Terrible job, no benefits." "The benefits are pretty good, actually," Elena grinned. "Full access to a penthouse, a house in the woods, and a man who cooks Italian food while wearing an apron. I'm taking off the apron. Don't you dare! It's growing on me." They spent the night wrapped together on the couch, talking and kissing and planning a future that neither of them had thought possible months before. Damian told her about his plans to legitimize more of his business operations, to shift away from the violence that had defined his family for generations. Elena shared her dream of eventually going back to school, maybe becoming a full nurse or even a nurse practitioner. They talked about Rose's recovery, about whether Elena would keep working at the clinic, about what it meant to build a life together when one of them operated outside the law. It wasn't a perfect plan. There were still dangers, still enemies, still moral complexities that didn't have easy answers, but it was theirs, and that made it worth fighting for. 2 weeks before Christmas, Rose was finally discharged from the rehabilitation facility. Elena and Damian picked her up together, Damian having arranged for the apartment to be completely modified with grab bars in the bathroom, a hospital-grade bed, and a chairlift for the stairs Rose wouldn't need but he'd installed anyway. Rose took one look at the modifications and teared up. "This is too much." "It's not enough," Damian said simply. "You raised someone extraordinary. The least I can do is make sure you're comfortable." "You love her." It wasn't a question. "More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." Rose studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Because if you hurt her, I'll find a way to hurt you back. Don't think just because I'm old and recovering from heart surgery that I can't make your life miserable." Damian's smile was genuine. "I would expect nothing less, Mrs. Bennett." They settled into a routine. Elena would work in the clinic during the day, come home to make dinner with Rose, and spend evenings either at the apartment or at Damian's penthouse. Weekends were reserved for longer stretches together, the three of them sometimes, just Elena and Damian others. Rose and Damian developed an unexpected friendship, bonding over their shared love of classic films and their mutual tendency to give Elena well-meaning advice she promptly ignored. "You've gotten stubborn," Rose observed one evening while they were making dinner together. "I learned from the best." "I'm serious, Ellie. You're different now, stronger, more sure of yourself." Rose handed her a wooden spoon. "That's his influence. He makes you feel like you can handle anything." "Is that bad?" "No, it's good. As long as you remember that you were strong before you met him too. He didn't create that strength. He just helped you find it." Elena thought about that conversation later, curled up next to Damian in his penthouse while snow fell silently outside the windows. Was it true? Had she always been this strong, or had loving him transformed her into someone braver? "What are you thinking about?" Damian asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "Whether I was always strong or whether you made me that way." "You were always strong. I just gave you reasons to prove it." He shifted to look at her. "Do you remember what you said to me on that subway platform, when I told you not to touch me?" "I told you to shut up and let me help." "Exactly. You saw a dangerous situation, a man who clearly wanted to be left alone, And you chose to help anyway. That's not something I taught you. That's who you've always been. Then what did you teach me? That it's okay to be selfish sometimes. To want things for yourself instead of just surviving for other people. Damien pulled her closer. You spent your whole life taking care of Rose, making yourself small, accepting whatever scraps the world offered. I taught you that you deserve more than that you're allowed to demand better. Elena kissed him softly. Best lesson I ever learned. Christmas came and went in a blur of family dinners and quiet moments. Damien gave Rose a first edition of her favorite mystery novel and Elena a necklace with a small key pendant, a reminder of the night he'd given her access to his life. Elena gave Damien a framed photo from that night at the house outside the city, the two of them laughing in the kitchen, covered in flour from their disastrous attempt at making bread. Rose gave them both a lecture about safe sex and making sure Elena continued using birth control, which resulted in the most mortifying 20 minutes of Elena's life. In January, Vincent approached Elena with an unexpected request. The organization needed someone to help with their legitimate businesses. Specifically, a medical consultant for the workers' compensation program Damien was setting up for their legal enterprises. It would mean better pay, flexible hours, and the chance to actually use her nursing knowledge in a meaningful way. I don't know anything about workers' compensation, Elena protested. You know about patient care and medical necessity? That's what we need. Vincent's expression was serious. Mister, Moretti is trying to clean up his operations, make things more legitimate. Having someone like you involved sends a message that he's serious about taking care of his people. Elena discussed it with Rose that night, weighing the pros and cons of getting more deeply involved in Damien's world. If you take this job, there's no pretending you're separate from what he does, Rose said. You'll be part of it, officially and completely. I know. And you're okay with that? Elena thought about it honestly. I think so. He's trying to change, to build something better. If I can help with that, if I can be part of the solution instead of just benefiting from the problems, then yes, I want to do it. She started the job in February, working 3 days a week out of a small office in one of Damien's legitimate properties. The work was challenging but rewarding, reviewing medical claims, ensuring injured workers got proper care, developing safety protocols for the various businesses under the Moretti umbrella. It felt good to use her skills for something beyond survival. But not everything was smooth. In March, another family tried to move into Moretti territory. There was a tense week where Damien barely slept, where armed guards tripled around Elena's building, where Vincent called hourly with updates Elena wasn't supposed to hear. She watched Damien transform from the man who cooked her dinner to the cold, calculated crime boss who'd built an empire through strategic ruthlessness. It was the first real test of whether she could handle both sides of him. The night had ended, with the rival family backing down after Damien proved he had law enforcement and political connections they couldn't match. Elena found him in his office at 3 a.m., staring at spreadsheets like they held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. Come to bed, she said from the doorway. Soon. I need to finalize. Damien, come to bed. He looked up, and she saw exhaustion in every line of his face. I could have lost today. If they'd been smarter, better connected, more willing to escalate. But they weren't. You won. Again. Elena crossed to his desk, closing the laptop despite his protest. And now you're going to come to bed, and let me remind you that you're more than just the man who wins. You're also the man who cooks terrible pasta and wears ridiculous aprons and loves me even though I'm stubborn and reckless. You are stubborn and reckless. I learned from you. Damien let her pull him to his feet, let her lead him to the bedroom, let her hold him while he finally allowed himself to be vulnerable. And in the morning, when sunlight streamed through the windows and the crisis had passed, he looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him human. I don't know what I'd do without you, he said. Probably make better business decisions and get more sleep. Probably, but I'd be miserable. Spring arrived with warmth and possibility. Rose was fully recovered, stronger than she'd been in years, talking about maybe taking a watercolor class at the community center. Elena's job was going well, and she'd been accepted into a part-time nursing program that would let her finish her degree while still working. Damien had successfully shifted more of his operations toward legitimate businesses, though Elena knew there were still gray areas she chose not to examine too closely. On a warm evening in May, exactly 7 months after that night on the subway platform, Damien took Elena back to the house outside the city. They cooked dinner together, ate on the porch while watching the sun set over the trees, and talked about everything and nothing. "I have something to tell you," Damien said as they were cleaning up. Elena's heart jumped. "Good something or bad something?" "Good, I think." He dried his hands on a towel, then turned to face her. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not being able to build a life with someone if you're constantly looking over your shoulder for the next threat, about wanting something more stable." "Okay? I'm stepping back. Not completely. I'll still have oversight, still be involved in major decisions, but Vincent is taking over day-to-day operations. I'm transitioning to a more advisory role." Damien took her hands. "It means less danger, more normal hours, the ability to actually plan a future without wondering if I'll survive the week." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You're doing this for me." "I'm doing this for us. Because I want to marry you someday, and I can't ask you to marry someone who might not live to see the wedding." He cupped her face. "I want to build a life with you, Elena. A real life. And that means making changes I should have made years ago. What if you resent me for it? What if you miss the power, the control? I won't, because having you is more important than any of that." Damien's thumbs brushed away the tears on her cheeks. "You saved my life on that subway platform. But more than that, you gave me a reason to want to keep living it, to want to be better than I was. That's worth more than any empire." Elena kissed him, pouring 7 months of love and fear and hope into the contact. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. "For the record, I would have married you anyway, danger and all." "I know, that's what scared me." Damien pulled a small box from his pocket. "But I'd rather not test that theory if we don't have to." The ring was simple, a single diamond on a platinum band, elegant without being ostentatious. Exactly what Elena would have chosen for herself if she'd ever let herself dream that big. "I know it's fast," Damien said. "I know we've only been together 7 months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me, Elena. Build this crazy, complicated, beautiful life with me." "Yes," Elena said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they stood there on the porch of the house where everything had changed, holding each other while the stars came out overhead. 7 months ago, Elena had been desperate and alone, begging a father who didn't care and accepting help from a dangerous stranger because she had no other choice. Now she stood engaged to that stranger, no longer dangerous in the same way, no longer a stranger at all. She'd found love in the last place she'd expected it, had chosen to stay when everyone told her to run, had built something real out of the chaos. Rose cried when they told her, happy tears that she tried to hide behind complaints about how young they were and how fast they were moving. But when Damien left the room to take a call, Rose grabbed Elena's hand and held it tight. "Are you happy, baby girl?" "Happier than I knew I could be." "Then that's all that matters." Rose studied the ring. "He's a good man under all that darkness. You brought that out in him. We brought it out in each other." The wedding was small and private, held at the house outside the city on a perfect September afternoon. Rose walked Elena down the makeshift aisle, her step steady and strong. Vincent served as Damien's best man, making a speech that had everyone laughing and crying simultaneously. A handful of Damien's most trusted people attended, along with a few friends Elena had made at the clinic and her nursing program. It wasn't the wedding Elena had imagined as a little girl. No church, no massive guest list, no traditional anything. But it was perfect because it was theirs, built from the ground up to reflect who they actually were, rather than who anyone expected them to be. "I used to think love was supposed to be safe," Elena said during her vows, "that the right person would make life easier, smoother, more predictable. But you taught me that love is supposed to be brave, that it's okay to choose something complicated if it's also true. You've given me everything, a future with my grandmother, a life I'm proud of, and the courage to demand more than just survival. I love you, and I choose you, every single day." Damien's vows were simpler. "You saved my life. Then you saved my soul. I'm yours, completely and forever." Everything I am, everything I have, everything I'll ever be, it's all yours. They danced under string lights as the sun set, ate cake that Rose had insisted on making despite everyone's protests, and celebrated with the strange family they'd built from the wreckage of their individual pasts. Late that night, after everyone had left and it was just the two of them in the house where so much had changed, Elena found Damien standing at the window looking out at the dark woods. "Any regrets?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "None. You?" "Not a single one." She rested her cheek against his back. "Though I reserve the right to regret things when your world inevitably gets complicated again." "Fair enough." Damien turned in her arms, pulling her close. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said. Everything I am is yours now, the good parts and the parts I'm still trying to fix." "I know. And everything I am is yours, including the stubbornness and the recklessness and the tendency to make heroic but stupid decisions. My favorite qualities." They stood there in the quiet, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow built something worth keeping. Outside, the world continued spinning with all its dangers and complications. But inside this house, in this moment, they were safe. They were loved. They were home. 3 years later, Elena finished her nursing degree and started working at a free clinic in Brooklyn that served uninsured immigrants. Damien had fully transitioned out of the illegal side of his family business, focusing instead on real estate development and legitimate investments. They split their time between the penthouse in the city and the house in the woods, building a life that balanced both their needs. Rose lived with them in the city, healthier and happier than she'd been in decades. She'd taken up painting and had even sold a few pieces at a local gallery. She watched Elena and Damien with the satisfaction of someone who'd worried they'd chosen wrong, but had been proven wonderfully incorrect. On a cold February morning, Elena woke to find Damien already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked, still half asleep. "I was just thinking about that night on the subway platform, how I'd been stabbed and was bleeding out and thought I was going to die in the most pathetic way possible. And then this girl appeared out of nowhere and saved me without asking for anything in return." He brushed hair from her face. "I've spent 3 years trying to figure out what I did to deserve you. I still don't have an answer." "You don't have to deserve me. You just have to keep choosing me. Always." Damien's hand moved to her stomach, where a barely there curve was just beginning to show. "And choosing this, choosing us." Elena covered his hand with hers, feeling the flutter of new life beneath their joined palms. They hadn't planned it, but they weren't unhappy about it either. Another complication, another beautiful mess to navigate together. "Rose is going to lose her mind when we tell her," Elena said. "In a good way or a bad way?" "Both, probably. She'll lecture us about being too young and not being married long enough, then immediately start knitting baby blankets and planning nursery themes." "Sounds about right." Damien pulled her closer. "Are you scared?" "Terrified, but also excited and grateful, and so many other things I don't have words for yet." Elena looked up at him. "Are you?" "Yes, but I'm ready. We're ready." He kissed her forehead. "We can handle anything together." And they could. They had proven it over and over, through danger and doubt, through violence and vulnerability, through every test that life and Damien's world had thrown at them. They'd built something real from impossible beginnings, had chosen love when logic said to run, had stayed when everyone expected them to leave. Elena Cole had boarded a bus to New York 7 months pregnant with desperation and empty of hope. She'd saved a stranger's life and had her own life saved in return, not through money or protection, but through being seen, through being valued, through being loved in a way that demanded she love herself just as fiercely. And Damien Moretti, the man who'd thought he was bleeding out on a subway platform, had discovered that sometimes the person who saves your life isn't a doctor or a guard or a miracle. Sometimes it's a nursing assistant with steady hands and a brave heart who refuses to walk away even when walking away would be safer. They had both been saved that night. They were still saving each other, every single day, in all the small and large ways that love requires. And that, Elena thought as she drifted back to sleep in the arms of the man she'd chosen, and would keep choosing forever, was worth every risk, every danger, every impossible moment that had brought them here. The subway platform where it all began was just another station now, filled with commuters who had no idea that 7 months ago, two lives had collided there and changed everything. But sometimes when Elena passed through on her way to work, she'd pause and remember. Remember the blood, the fear, the choice to help a stranger when everyone else had walked away. And she'd smile, knowing that the best decisions in life were often the ones that made the least sense at the time.